Hello again, friends. And you are our friends, or at least some of you are my friends. I don't know about the other guy here on the line, but welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru, a program guaranteed to upset some people and really brighten the day of many, many, many others. I am your host, the great Brian Lass, and I do this every time. I'll be asking your questions to the man who will be answering them, the leader of the cult of Cornette, the exalted one of the hot tub, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Well, fumble mouth, you try to redeem yourself right there with a little fucking witticism at the end, and it was a little witticism. I'm in a happy mood this morning. As we record this, it's a fine Sunday morning. I got up as I do these days since I became a senior citizen. I got up now on to 6:30, 6:45 this morning. Went out and milked the cows. At least, actually, I think that one was a bull, but he gave me the most milk. But anyway, and the birds were singing, and well, at least maybe we won't have any stories about dog masturbators on the program today. That'll be a plus. At least we've been doing those. There's a lot of dog masturbating stories in wrestling, as we covered on a previous program. You know, when I first got into business, I heard that back in the 70s in Nashville, and one of the heels working the territory had a trained dog. And on Saturday nights, when the guys were all at a spot show, they all rushed back to Nashville as quick as they could before the guy's dog got all the good-looking girls. But anyway, so I got up, and the birds were singing, and little Harley Quinn was romping around, and I said, you know what? There's one thing I miss about this pandemic: going out and buying my meat and seafood and prized groceries, not just the onion soup mix and the box stuff or potato chips or whatever, but the meat of the matter, the good, the high quality, the big ticket items. I miss that. I like to peruse the meat and seafood counter, pick out the pieces, tell the fine fishmonger, say, give me 1.5 pounds of those giant scallops if you would.
Yeah, this does raise the question, what do you buy in terms of steak and seafood? Typically, if it's a good week in Castle Cornette, what are you buying?
Well, if you hadn't have fucking jumped in there when I was on a roll, I'd be getting to that by now, wouldn't I? So anyway, I like to scan down the meat counter, and they got those big 1/2 pound 80/20 high quality ground beef patties. I'll take 8 or 10 of those. And what about, and the chicken cordon bleu that's ready to go. Put a couple of those in there. And I don't go for steaks as much as it's 100. It's going to be literally the heat index for the next week in Louisville is going to be over 100 degrees. It's not like we're grilling out, for fuck's sake. So I'm getting more stuff you can do in the oven and or the deep fryer and or et cetera. But nevertheless, I like, and the bacon, the peppercorn bacon, big thick cut stuff. Got to have that. That don't come in a package. Got to get that off the meat counter. And the meat gentleman. What are you laughing?
The meat gentleman.
Yes, there's the fishmonger and the meat gentleman. And the meat gentleman here at my local store that I haven't been to now in 4 months, almost 4 months this week's the last time I went to the grocery store. We have nice conversations. He's a fan of the program, and we have nice conversations, and he doesn't put his thumb on the scale. He gives me a fair way out and everything. So we have talks and everything. And I got the cod. I got 2 or 3 pounds. The cod was on sale. Big old cod loins. And some various items. But anyway, I was trying to be a good citizen when I went out I figured I'll go at 8:30 on Sunday morning. Nobody will be there. I've never been to the grocery at 8:30 on Sunday morning. I found out not a lot of people are there, but there's still people there, to my surprise. Maybe they thought the same thing I did. And I prepared myself like a good quality citizen that uses his left and right turn indicators. As a matter of fact, the Governor Bashir here, has issued a mask mandate. You go out in public, you got to cover your snotty fucking face. And I applaud him for that, because also he's a Democrat, so he believes in things like science and medicine. But I prepared myself. I got the ninja outfit. It's all washed. I've basically got long pants, full socks and shoes, no flip-flops, long sleeves, latex gloves, my nice black mask. The only skin I'm showing is forehead and ears. and I took a shower. I blew my nose before I went out. I'm as good a citizen as I can be there. I go into Kroger. Everybody's wearing masks, but nobody is wearing gloves. Why the fuck are you not wearing gloves, people? Because you wear the mask for other people. You wear the gloves for yourself. Because when you're leaning on shit, touching shit, it's public spaces. Treat everyone like they're a fucking airborne pathogen. Every human being in the world is now dangerous and should be viewed at with high suspicion. Your spidey sense should be tingling, and don't touch anything. So you got the latex gloves on. And when you're in the store, you're touching things with the gloves and you're not touching your face. And then when you get through, you're in the hostile territory. Then when you get out of there and you get back to your vehicle, you peel the one-use latex gloves off. And then you open the door to your vehicle. You throw the gloves in the garbage bag that is there for just such a reason. And you hit the Purell and you Purell your hands before you get in the vehicle and touch anything in the interior. And then you scratch your fucking eye. That's the way you do it. I can't believe the number of people not wearing gloves. But everybody's wearing a mask. And I did have a nice conversation with the meat gentleman. And he actually served, since they're on rationed personnel, he served at double duty. He did the fishmongering too. But then I'm over in the produce section. And I turn around and there's one guy not wearing a mask in the whole story. And he's as Republican as you can get. He's my age. He's got one of them fucking little polo shirts on. It seems to be popular amongst those people.
This is what happened at the post office? Same guy?
No, it's not. It's a different
Polo
guy,
shirt.
but they all look the same. A middle-aged white Republican, just like these middle-aged white women that vote for Trump. They all look the same. They got the same hair color, everything. But he wasn't Jeffrey Epstein. He looked, I don't know. He looked more like fucking Mooch McGee. He was just a bland guy. But he had no gloves, no mask, and not flip-flops, but the slip-on shoes with no socks, and the shorts that aren't really long pants, but they aren't really shorts, so they just look fucking stupid. And he's right in front of the baked potatoes. And I said, excuse me, because he's pulling through, picking up potatoes and putting them down, and he's there. And I said, excuse me. And he looked at me. I said, can I come over to your house tonight to dinner and take a shit on your dining room table? And he stood there and stared at me for a second like he didn't really understand what I said. And I said, because you just fucking snotted all over the baked potatoes that I was going to have for my dinner tonight. Thanks a fucking lot. Because now I've seen him pawing all over the fucking potatoes. I can't have any of them potatoes. So, and he didn't say anything to me, and I fucking walked on, which was the preferred resolution to all of that. So the only thing I got my meat, but I didn't get my potatoes. And after all, how can you have any potatoes if you won't finish your meat, or whatever fucking Pink Floyd said?
That's right. Another brick in the wall.
Well, it was another fucking maskless asshole. And I was talking actually to the fine young lady at checkout. She's only about 85. Bless her heart. And she's still there. She's wearing the mask and everything. I said, the one guy not wearing a mask. I said, and they've even got a sign in the front. The governor has issued a mandate. It's on the news. She said, we really have no way to. Same thing as post office. They don't want to get in a confrontation because they see these fucking people on the internet, these Republican fucking Trumpers, assholes, spreading their fucking snot all over the place and then committing mayhem when they're asked to cover up and keep from infecting people. Like it's somehow a fucking assault on their God-given freedoms. Like there is no God. You don't have freedom to goddamn not wear a seatbelt, so fucking put your mask on. Fuck you, in other words. But anyway, I was telling this nice lady, and she said it's hard to enforce. And I said, here's the easy way to enforce this. If everybody out there in the world, not only in the sound of my voice, but the other 17,000 people in the world that don't listen to this program, just make it a rule that if you are not wearing a mask, then all the people that are wearing masks also are allowed to treat you as a hostile airborne pathogen. And all of the mask-wearing people will also be assigned a stick. And they'll carry that stick around, and every time they see somebody out in public not wearing a mask, they will beat the piss out of them with that fucking stick. And pretty soon, I bet you'd see a lot of people wearing fucking masks. So that's my idea. But I don't have to do that now for at least, because I've got 2 freezers, and I don't have to do that now for at least fucking 2 months. Because this was a bulk stock up session.
And this is you in a good mood.
Well, yes, because I have food. But still, that doesn't... Even if you're in a good mood, you should still take a stick and beat over the head people who are not wearing masks, because they're trying to kill you and your family, so fuck them. But and also, they're showing their fucking assholes.
But if you're beating them over the head with a stick, don't you risk more germs flying out of their mouth and nose as you're doing that?
Well, it's too late now. They've already, according to the computer simulations you see on the news, they've already fucking infected the whole room. So if they get a little brain matter on you, what the fuck difference? They've already blew snot and fucking phlegm and who knows what feces. It's the people apparently, and we've never known this because we never bothered to fucking find it out or figure it out, but apparently people are just like monkeys flinging their shit at each other at the zoo. Everything from the power flush toilets now that is literally an atomic bomb of urine and feces spread in tiny, minute droplets all over the entire fucking room, the bathroom. Or people just, they've done the dye thing now. One guy would dye on his fingers. It looks like a goddamn whole class of finger painters in kindergarten have been at the restaurant. No, I think we need to stay as far away from other human beings as possible from this point forward, even after the coronavirus. It's too risky, and they're filthy, 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 filthy fucking people. But I'm in a good mood today.
Seemingly, yes.
I'll tell you why. And a lot of other people in the cult of Cornette are in a good mood today because official, what is, by the time you get this out, it's going to be, Monday night, early Tuesday morning. Greenwich Mean Time, at least. You laugh over the strangest things. Anyway, stop me before I sub-reference again. By the time that you people hear this, all of the domestic orders of the limited edition Christmas action figure variant have been mailed. As we speak, as you hear my voice right now, if you ordered one of those action figures in June, it's all, either some of you have it. The tweets have been off the charts about people thrilled with this limited edition collector's item. But all the other domestics are in the mail, and most of the internationals are packaged up and will be being shipped in, I believe, 3 installments this week, and everything by next Saturday of the internationals. And by the way, once again, allow either 4 days or 8 weeks. I said France the other day. I said, but one package got there to France in 4. It wasn't the France package, the French connection. It was a package to the United Kingdom. Somehow made it in 4 days. It beat priority mail to California on a timeline to go to the United Kingdom. And several other people said they just got theirs after 8 weeks exactly from the time that I shipped it. And it was postmarked. So anything in between 4 days and 8 weeks if you ordered internationally. Because I think it's the customs. The customs people are shorthanded. Or they're searching through things to spray them with Lysol first. I'm not sure. Because we are, I guess, we're the leader of the world. The United States is in global or in coronavirus cases. And we've got 30% now of the global total. So anything that comes out of this country, people are scrubbing it down and fucking spraying it with things. And if you do go to JimCornette.com, the store is still closed while we process these last orders and finish our restocking and sweeping out of our fulfillment center. But it's next weekend. The Cornette's Collectibles store is back active next weekend at JimCornette.com, which will be the weekend of the 17th, 18th, and 19th. I'm not giving a specific day or time. It's one of those things you just got to figure out for yourself.
Well, with all that out of the way, Jim, I think it's time we get to some questions. We do have a big watch-along later on, so I want to get as many questions as possible.
Oh, yeah. Well, you very poor, unprofessional show host, you have forgot to billboarded that today we are going to watch along with another great wrestling classic. Actually, classic may be in quotation marks here. Shawn Michaels versus Vader from SummerSlam 1996 in Cleveland, Ohio, with background on the business metrics and etc. And then the match, which had its great points and also had its infamous points. So that's later on.
That's right. Well, I would have done that at the beginning. I would have done that at the beginning, but you wanted to talk about your meat wielder and your fish friend and all this stuff.
What? Meat wielder and my fish friend?
I don't remember what meat gentleman, excuse me.
The meat gentleman and the fishmonger. What's the matter with you?
Is there something wrong with the fish guy? Fishmonger is nowhere near as nice as meat gentleman.
Well, because the meat gentleman actually technically would be a butcher, but I think that's a plain everyday term, whereas a fishmonger is a professional person who mongers fish. Everybody knows that.
Everyone must know that, but let's get some questions here,
Yeah,
Jim.
so we're going to have that watch along later on where Vader mongered Michaels.
Well, we'll see how many temper tantrums Shawn Michaels has in that match. I forget how many, but I'm sure there were a couple.
It's a drinking game, actually, if you go through and you know what to watch for, which after today you will. Nobody will ever look at this match the same way again.
You know, I have questions about it, but I'm going to save them until that point in the show because we could talk all show about that match and about Shawn Michaels in 1996. But let's get to some of the hot topics in the world of professional wrestling. Now, several people have sent us a specific tweet that I know you didn't see because you no longer see Dave Meltzer's tweets.
You are correct. I unfortunately had to block Uncle Dave because every time I would read something he said, it would make me dumber.
Well, there was a tweet the other day that I saw, and several people sent it to us. I'm going to give credit to one person. I'll tell you why in a second. It was sent to us using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Ryan Caligari, and I'm going to give him credit because after he...
Is he a doctor, and does he have a cabinet?
Well, no, but after he tweeted it to us, he was seemingly attacked for snitch tagging, because they didn't realize he was trying to ask us our opinions about it for the show. They thought he was just saying, Jim Cornette, see this, and attack Dave Meltzer, which wasn't actually what he was trying to do. He wanted us to talk about it here on the show, which is what we're about to do. Dave Meltzer tweeted the other day, except for All Japan, no company at one time in the 80s had anything close to Young Bucks, FTR, Omega and Page, Lucha Brothers, SCU, Santana and Ortiz, Best Friends, Jericho and Sammy.
Oh, good Lord.
Even Private Party, all at the same time. So the topic is tag team divisions, and is this AEW tag team division, with the exception of All Japan, is this the greatest tag team division of all time?
Well, now, wait a minute. Well, obviously, no, that's not the case. The greatest tag team, are you on fucking LSD? I agree with Dave's tweet, the way that he wrote it. He said, no company has ever had anything like, and then he named all those teams all at the same time. No company has ever had anything like a couple of those teams ever in history at all, period, by choice. So, yeah, I agree. No company has ever had anything like all those teams. Whether that's a good or bad thing is open to debate. And no, if he, I know what he was trying to say. I'm trying to find some fun in it. I'm trying to mock it with it. I haven't just cussed Dave Meltzer in public. Privately, I did via fucking private communication. I've told him exactly what I think about everything that's gone on over the last year or so and a lot of things he said. But I didn't do it publicly. But he's, at this point, it just gets ridiculous. And he's burying himself to even people at this point that tried to defend some of his defenses of AEW and or this style of wrestling in general. But specifically AEW, all of his friends and this, I guess, the kind of wrestling that suddenly at the age of 60 that he suddenly likes. He suddenly likes this fucking... He wouldn't have liked this wrestling 20 years ago because they wouldn't have allowed anything like this wrestling 20 years ago. So maybe he would have liked it then. I don't know. We'll never know because they didn't have anything like that for good reason. because wrestling drew money back then. But it's just he's burying himself, because that's a ludicrous statement. Not only if you went to the 80s WWF and NWA rosters, whether it be Midnight Rock and Roll, Road Warriors, Tully and Arn, or fucking Bulldogs, Hart Foundation, Demolition, fucking, or go to a 70s fucking Apter magazine and look at the top 10 tag team ratings. And you're telling me that you've got a Stevens and Bockwinkel or a Stevens and Patterson or a fucking any great tag team of I just don't know what to say. FTR, obviously, as we've said, is not only the best tag team in the business now, and that's still, unfortunately, faint praise, but they go far and above that to stand out head and shoulders above most everybody else as the greatest tag team in the business. They would have fit in 80s NWA. They could have easily fit work-wise in 80s WWF, but they aren't fucking 300 pounds apiece, so who knows how that would go. They could have worked any territory. They could have worked with any talent. And then you got the Bucks, and for the kind of people who like that kind of thing, it's the kind of thing those people like. It's completely preposterous, the look of them and the gall of them, but they do the flippy nonsense modern wrestling better than anybody else because they're natural gymnasts, and that's basically what they're gymnasts doing wrestling things, kind of. The gymnastics is more important to them, but they're the best in the business at whatever you would want to call that style that they do. SCU, any two of the three of them, I've said I think it's the best working team in AEW in the ring before FTR got there. But are we seriously seeing a Midnight Express, a Rock and Roll Express, a Stevens and Patterson, a Tully and Arn, a Funk Brothers, a fucking go on down the list? Are we seeing those from SCU? And I like those guys. No. Who else was on the fucking list that he was claiming was or trying to insinuate was a great tag team? Private Party. Bless those fine young men who work very hard and are greener than pepper trees. And Mark Quinn is an amazing athlete. And as I've mentioned, if you put him in an intensive training program where that's what he did, like NXT or OVW was, for a year or two, and put him in a ring with some veterans, you could make a star babyface out of that fucking guy. But as a tag team, for fuck's sake, I mean, if you want to talk about even non-major league WWE or AEW, you telling me the Private Party is as good as the Briscoe brothers, for fuck's sake. In Mark and Jay, I'm not talking about Jack and Jerry. No, they're a green average independent tag team. It does a lot of fucking moves, and one guy's a freak athlete. But seriously, I'm sorry, that's like saying a guy's a world-class cliff diver. It makes him a wonderful airline pilot. It just, no. Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara, they've had, 3 tag team matches together? They're that noted world-class tag team that's better than the fucking British Bulldogs and whoever the fuck else in history. Don and Al Green, the masked fucking interns, whoever. Let's say the Lucha Brothers. Yes, I guess they're the best tag team in the history of Lucha Libre. Unfortunately, as we've mentioned, it's very hard for them to have a fucking American match. I've seen them try an MLW, and it wasn't pretty. And that's in person. I've seen them try on AEW, and it wasn't pretty, because they don't really try because nobody makes them try. FTR slowed them down a little bit, and they look fine, but they're not going to do it on their own. But still, for fuck's sake, are we even saying that now the Lucha Brothers are a better tag team than fucking the Death Missionaries? I know there was 3 of them, but still.
No, you proclaim them the best lucha tag team of all time. I haven't heard too many.
Well, no, I was being kind of facetious or whatever. They're the best right now. I guess from what their PR tells us, they're the best tag team in authentic lucha libre at this point, right? What other? Best Friends.
Best
Fucking
Friends.
Seriously? That's where it just gets. It's like a guy that's trying to tell you and convince you of a conspiracy theory with Dave, and the first couple of points that he brings up is kind of like, he might have something. Well, that actually did have her. I could see that. And then he goes all the way into where he needs a tinfoil hat, and you're like, brother, what the fuck? When you get to Best Friends, great tag team, fucking seriously. And who else was on that list? He named so many of them.
Santana and Ortiz.
God damn it. I've met those guys. They were very nice guys, but fuck. The more we see, the more we realize that the Pampero Firpo Jr., whichever one, Ortiz, I believe, wants to be one of the Three Stooges, the comedy stuff. Santana was more serious. He did that promo, but they're always in the goofy shit. And they're an indie tag team. They've never had experience working at a major company, a major television level. I know they've been in TNA. Notice I've used the word major. They just do indie matches. I'm sorry. We're talking about one great tag team and everybody that was mentioned, a couple of good indie level tag teams, and the best, flippy team, if you want to see that type of thing, because that's why they look like small children, because grown adult men with physiques that you would be intimidated by can't do that shit, nor should they. So, but Dave is just going so far with this that it's just gotten preposterous. And I guess that's why why he's mad at me, why everybody's mad at me, because I'm just not going to goddamn go along. Okay, well, shit, this shit sandwich is the best fucking burger I've ever had. Or this Impossible Burger tastes just like meat. No, it doesn't. That's what they ought to call this new the Impossible Wrestling. Looks just like wrestling. No, it fucking doesn't. And just because I'm the only motherfucker in the world that is not looking for a job, trying to make friends, want one last run on TV, or just don't give a shit, just because I'm honest and tell you what you're fucking looking at, I'm sorry. But more and more people, obviously, as we continue to pick up disgruntled wrestling fans that are offended and repulsed by what they're fed as wrestling these days, they're starting to see through this shit also. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, in a lot of these cases, most of these veterans going along with this, or these veteran journalists trying to make excuses for this, either want a job, want to be friends with people, want one last run on television, or just don't give a shit and are just jacking off and taking somebody's money. I choose to be not in either of the four categories.
And then, of course, there's the argument that you're out of touch if you don't accept that this is modern wrestling, that this is the natural evolution of wrestling. And
I accept that this is modern wrestling, and I accept that it stinks so loud it would gag a man eating Fremunda cheese in a septic tank of a slaughterhouse. And I'm going to comment on that anytime I get a chance because they offend me.
Can you imagine, there's some great television shows out there. They're not filmed exactly like The Fugitive or classic shows from the 60s, but they've evolved and they're still great and they still have storytelling and good cinematography, and you could argue that some of the shows today are better than any shows ever before. But what if those shows didn't exist? What if every television show was a reality show? Would you have to accept that, well, this is just where television is now? It's just as good as it used to be, it's just different. And you can't point out, well, no, I like story. I like shows that make sense. I like shows that are logical. I like shows with actors.
Well, how about this? How about just consistency? There have been changes in the rules and updates to every professional sport since those sports have been formed. Basketball, baseball, football, and they're highly debated rules changes, or the three-point shot, or whatever the fuck it may be. They're debated amongst the fans, and they're controversial sometimes. Instant replay. But it doesn't change the logic and the concept of the game that they're playing. In entertainment, Simpsons been on the air for 30 years, right? And they've over time evolved and changed. And there's some things they do now that they would have never done and never been able to do 30 years ago on television, and other things they did 30 years ago that they probably wouldn't be able to get away with today. But Homer Simpson never, in the course of the program, went to Harvard and became a scholar and then started running a fucking major corporation where he was charitable instead of like the evil Mr. Burns. They didn't change the whole goddamn program. Or they didn't just come out and tell you 15 years into the run, you know what? All this shit's been bullshit. We were just kidding. But here's what we really think, and just change everybody around. Or wink at each other, whatever. You can draw any kind of correlation between sports, movies, television shows, entertainment, books, which most of the time have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's kind of the way those things are written, whether they're fiction or non. The only thing that's just completely given up and thrown its hands up in the air and said, fuck it, we're just going to make fun of what we used to be that when we were popular, and now to an ever decreasing number of people, we're going to just do stupid shit that makes fun of the shit that we used to do when we were so much more popular. And so I'm going to take the piss out of it, because what the fuck? I don't care. And I've already offended everybody I can offend. I've found that friends are highly overrated. As my dear friend Bobby Heenan used to say, a friend in need is a pest. So I don't have to worry about hurting anybody's feelings because I don't give a shit. And I know what they're doing better than they do because I've been doing this for 40 fucking years. And I've assessed and or helped promote and produce and develop some of the biggest stars of the last 30 years. So, and they hate that I don't like them, because now they've even come up with the thing where, well, if Cornette doesn't like you, you must be doing something right. Yeah, to 500,000 fucking basement dwelling cretins on Twitter, you're going to be a hero. But you're going to be a fucking short-lived hero, and when those cretins find another way to fucking fill their time in between masturbatory fantasies on the internet of something else, then they're going to leave you, and then you can't get a job in the wrestling business, and you're fucked. So I guess they just don't like that I just take the piss out of them because I don't give a shit, and I'm honest, and I'm knowledgeable. Modern wrestling, this is what we're seeing.
Well, going back to this tweet, there's a lot of different ways you could read it. And again, there is a difference between what Dave reports and Dave's opinion. And I look at it that way. Dave's opinion is that what he enjoys, the type of tag team matches he enjoys, this roster in AEW is as good as anything since All Japan. But not everyone has the same tastes as Dave. Not everyone has the same sensibilities as Dave. And let's talk about tag team divisions. You brought up Stevens and Bockwinkel before. Realistically, the AWA had a fairly small roster. So even though they were one of the great tag teams of all time, it wasn't like they were 8 teams deep in the AWA. So let's look at the 80s, because the 80s you did have a lot of tag teams in different places. If I had to ask you, what is the greatest tag team division of all time, what would you pick?
Oh, God. Well, and you are correct in that, especially in the 60s, 70s, the territories didn't keep huge rosters. But you can look to the late 70s Carolinas, where you had it, and somebody's going to go back and look at the dates and say, well, so-and-so left 2 weeks before this other team got there. But in that period of time, you had Ric Flair and Greg Valentine, Ole and Gene Anderson, Snuka and Orndorff, the goddamn, Mr. Wrestling 1 and 2 worked some of the late 70s Carolina shows in the tag team tournaments. I mean, help me. Who am I leaving out here? As far as the Steamboat, did I say Steamboat and Youngblood? The Briscoe Brothers. That late 70s, early 80s, 4 or 5 year period? How many other great tag teams? I mean, Superstar and Paul Jones were a top team for a long time. But there's just a territory, not even a national company, that was so fucking deep. Who did I leave out of that group?
You named a lot of names, so just I'm not sure who you left off.
Yeah, well, the point is, and in the 80s, I mean, how can you look past Crockett Promotions? And the teams in the WWF could have been better than what they were if there was more focus even then on tag team wrestling up there. But still, when you had the fucking Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation and Demolition and the Rockers in there for a while and fucking it on and on, that was deep. Or
89 and 90. When I first became a fan of the WWF, those Saturday night's main events, the highlights were the tag team matches because they had like a rotating, one team could wrestle the other team. It would be the Brainbusters versus the Rockers, Brainbusters, Demolition, Rockers, Hart Foundation, Demolition. Those are just 4 teams. And they were fantastic matches. And I guess that's where, it comes down to. If you're just saying AEW has a gigantic tag team roster, you're right. But to compare teams like Private Party or Best Friends or Santana and Ortiz, won't even mention Jericho and Sammy.
Which one of those is the Killer Bees?
Maybe all of them. I don't know. Yeah. But that's the point. And the Killer Bees were over. I mean, we could argue they didn't have classic matches, but they were really over with that fan base. But it's just, to me, ridiculous to compare the AEW tag team division, which is FTR, the best tag team in wrestling, the Young Bucks, which aren't my taste, but I accept the fact that they are the best at what they do and that they have a giant fan base. Clearly, FTR and the Young Bucks.
I don't know. But Giants aren't as big as they used to be then.
It's not. But compared to the other tag teams in that company, the Young Bucks are right there at the top. So FTR and the Young Bucks at the top. Omega and Page are a team that were put together to build towards the eventual split.
Oh, we forgot about them. And, there you have it. You have a wonderful singles wrestler waiting to get out of that fucking team. Poor Hangman.
But to compare that division to Crockett Promotions compare it to WCW in 1990. Here, I see someone tweeted this as a reply. Steiner's, Doom, Midnight, Rock and Roll, Nasty Boys, Southern Boys, Arn and Barry.
Yeah, well, there you go. 1990 WCW doesn't get a lot of love, but it's ridiculous. And Dave is reaching now and alienating. He talks a lot about me driving people away. Yeah, when they're full of shit, generally I do, because the farther they get away from me, the less I smell of them. But he's running people off with just thinking that he's lost it, which, unfortunately, that's what I think, too. I think he's lost it. If he likes this shit, that's great, but that means he's lost his fucking mind. Anyway, I think we are throwing around the words greatest of all time way, way too easily these days.
Well, again, it was no company at one time in the 80s had anything close.
And by the way, All Japan, that's because what did they do? They picked all of the greatest teams from all of the territories and brought them over for their tours. So, of course, on one tour, they would have a better tag team roster than anybody else. And you saw all those great dream tag team matches of guys who worked different territories that would never cross paths in the United States, but that you saw it over there. So yeah, but that's not even really applicable because they didn't have them. They cherry picked them from their American territories for tours. I don't know. He's reaching, tippy toeing.
Well, that was one of the big controversies of this past week.
Well, it shows you what a boring week it was. Oh, God. You know what? I'll tell you what. I think, and I don't say this lightly, I think it would help Dave to talk to somebody. I think he should sit down and he should admit that he has a problem. That for some reason he is fixated on prissy prancing, fancy dancing, finger pointing, and gesticulating. But I wonder who he could talk to. If there was only somebody we knew to refer him to, that he could talk to on the phone, that he didn't even need to go out in the pandemic and meet in person, that could be completely professional, securely done online and by phone, counseling, and also very discreet. Don't have to let anybody know about it. Brian, who can you think that Dave could call to have someone to discuss his obvious mental issues with current wrestling about?
Well, I can guarantee it wouldn't be you.
It wouldn't be me. You know who it could be? Our fine friends at BetterHelp. That's right, because I can think of nobody that needs help more than Dave Meltzer right now, after making a statement like that in public. And the fine folks at BetterHelp can not only help you with your frivolous problems, but they can help you with serious problems as well. They can assess your needs and match you with a licensed professional therapist. You can start up in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line, but it's not self-help either. It's professional counseling done securely and online. We've been talking about it on the program. Haven't mentioned it in a few weeks, but a lot of our listeners have had great results from, I don't want to mention anybody's, but we get so many emails, and I hate to mention people's personal issues. We've read a couple and, not mentioned their names, but for a variety of issues that they've had that the listeners have told us about privately, me and you, Brian, BetterHelp has been a help to them. And that's why we plug it. And you can visit their website, read their testimonials. They're posted daily. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and you don't have to go out in public. And you also, if you don't have it available to you or close where you live, if you're out in the woods somewhere instead of a major city, this is the way that you can take charge of your mental health and discuss whatever you need to discuss with somebody that's trained to do the same with you. If you go to BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com/drive, then you can get 10% off your first month. That's for the Cornette Drive-Thru listeners only. BetterHelp.com/drive, 10% off your first month. So many people have been using BetterHelp. They're recruiting additional counselors. We understand now with the pandemic, well, we know everything's gone online. So we were ahead of the curve. We were telling our friends about these folks before it became fashionable. Anyway, BetterHelp.com/drive. And you too can start living a happier life today. You can be as happy as I am when I come back from visiting the meat gentleman and the fishmonger.
It's a great
and even if somebody hadn't a fucking blown snot all over my potatoes. You know what? The butcher and the baker, or the butcher and who are the butcher? That should have been the fucking the meat gentleman and the fishmonger.
Well, let's get another question in here. That is funny. That technically is their gimmick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's get a lighthearted one here on the show, Jim, before you light up anyone else. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Roberto DeMarco. Whose idea was WWF Greetings on Call? This was a service provided by WWF that allowed people to send greeting calls to others for their birthdays. In 1994, during an episode of Superstars, as Yokozuna went one-on-one with a jobber, Jerry Lawler sent a greeting to someone, and it was The Undertaker and Paul Bearer singing Happy Birthday. Do you remember this?
I have no knowledge of, possibly I was in a coma. I don't remember any of this.
Well, I have some audio here.
Please help me.
This is, actually, you're managing Yokozuna here, you and Fuji. This is from 1994 WWF Superstars. Let's hear this.
Have you heard of the WWF Greetings on Call?
Of course I have. What does that have to do with you?
Well, I'll tell you what. I called up, and I had my choice of WWF Superstars to leave a little message for Helen Hart. I could have had Lex Luger. I could have had Bret Hart. Who would want him? I could have had Razor Ramon or the Macho Man. But I chose the man that this man, Yokozuna, demolished at the Royal Rumble. I chose The Undertaker. And before his final demise, he left a few choice comments for Miss Helen Hart. And the phone should be ringing any minute with this message.
Wait a minute.
Oh, good Lord.
What are you up to, Jerry Lawler?
Listen to this.
Listen.
This is Paul Bearer calling from the My Undertaker and I are calling for... Hello?
1 second, Paul Bearer. I've got to find out something. please let us know that you have a touch-tone phone by pressing the 1 button now. If you...
What the fuck?
Hello, Helen. Hello, birthday girl. This is Paul Bear. My Undertaker asked me to call you and give you a special message because he dug up the news that it's your birthday. Here he comes now from the depths of the darkness to try and shed some light on your special day.
What the fuck is going on?
Happy birthday to you.
Oh, for God's sake.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Helen.
What the fuck?
Happy birthday to you.
That's great work, McMahon.
I can't believe this.
Well, we'll stop it there.
So one of the Yokozuna's matches was going on in the background. They were totally ignoring while they were playing that fucking fiasco.
Yes, you're at ringside. Fuji's at ringside. Yokozuna squashing someone. And The Undertaker and Paul Bearer are leaving a message for Helen.
And apparently they had them record it's like one of these automated prompts. They had them record like Billy or Joe or Helen or Betty or whatever, and they just plug it in.
That's right.
Good fucking God. No, I don't. I think that probably was the only time that was done, wasn't it, on television? Because if it had been done more than once, it seems like I'd remember that.
I don't remember any other times it was done, but I
have a feeling I know why it wasn't ever done on TV again. Good fucking God. I have no knowledge of what was going on there, but one of the things that they were trying to do back then to get with the modern program. Oh, look at all the technology. We can do these things. If fucking hell.
Well, you have nothing else to add to that, so let's get another question. This
well,
one,
they can't all be diamonds.
This one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Mikey in New Jersey. What's the story with Ahmed Johnson? He was incredibly over in the mid-90s. He had the look as far as size and muscles that Vince McMahon dreams of, and he seemed like a decent worker. He didn't have the best mic skills, but neither did guys like Bret Hart, and Bret Hart became a legend. I don't even remember Ahmed getting a title shot. What happened? I hate to bring up the race card, but do you think him being black had anything to do with it?
No, I think him being a fucking dangerous idiot had a lot to do with it. We've done this somewhere. I apologize to the longtime listeners because we've slandered Ahmed in detail on another program here. I remember within the last year or two, but as an overview, holy fuck no! Working with him was like working with a bag of wet hammers. It was, you didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, he looked like $1 million, and that he came up right at the time that Watts came in for that brief little time, and Watts thought he'd found a new junkyard dog, and Vince thought he'd found a new. Well, JYD was not really JYD up there, but it found whatever. He's got that body. He looks like $1 million. He can't. He's one of those guys that couldn't talk. But even though you didn't understand a goddamn word he said, he looked like he meant whatever the fuck he was saying, right? So that wasn't even so bad. Great googly moogly was who started that? Was that fucking Goldust? Somebody every time it might have been Owen Hart backstage. Every time fucking Ahmed would open his mouth, a great googly moogly. But he was just dangerous. He was dropping people on their head, and also because he suddenly was being pushed. He was from Texas, as I recall, and I think he'd worked a little bit on indies down there.
Yeah, he was Moadib in the GWF, and I believe he even worked for Crockett when Crockett started up the NWA again in '94.
Yeah, so and then here in '95 he's in the WWF. So point is, he's green. He started late because he didn't start young. He suddenly, in a short period of time, is in the WWF and started believing that he was going to be the biggest, or already was the biggest star in the business. And it self-destructed. And I think also on that previous, in more detailed discussion of Ahmed, we told the story about how, what was it, by 97, 98, he's on a Dennis Coralluzzo show. What year was that? It couldn't have been, it wasn't long after his run. I think I was still in Connecticut, wasn't I?
It probably was 90, I was going to say 98, but it may have been 97.
Yeah, but regardless, he's on a show in New Jersey for Dennis Coralluzzo, and I remember Dennis calling and telling me what he'd done, and I was still in Connecticut. So this was very shortly after his fucking star-making turn in the WWF. Dennis sent a guy to pick him up in just a small regular car, right, to just drive him over to the high school gym or the rec center or wherever this fucking show was being held in suburban New Jersey.
I think he sent Fred Rubenstein to pick up Ahmed Johnson, if I remember.
Okay, and Fred actually the most probably adult, mature, intelligent, and businesslike person at that time in Dennis Coralluzzo's orbit, Fred Rubenstein, to go pick the guy up in a normal car, and he got hot because he didn't get a limo and a chauffeur-driven limo. And said he wasn't going to leave the hotel until they sent a limo to pick him up. And Dennis Coralluzzo didn't send a limo to pick him up. What he did was he got on the fucking PA at the show and announced that Ahmed was in town, but he wouldn't come to the show because he didn't get a limousine. So if you wanted to call him and let him know that you were sorry you missed him, here's the hotel he's at, here's the phone number, and here's his room number. And you remember this, did he not? He ended up picking up the phone pretty much all night from all the people calling him, right? And then yelling at him, but he would still pick up the fucking phone.
I believe so. And one of the parts of the story I think you're leaving out is, I believe Dennis had pencils and paper handed out to the people in the crowd so they could write down the phone number.
So they could write it down just to make sure. But anyway, but no. So yes, question answerer. Ahmed Johnson looked great and etc. But no, he wasn't a great worker, and a combination of just recklessness and being that big and hurting people, and also his head got to be the biggest part of him. And so he was through the program fairly quickly. But then didn't he end up weighing like 350 pounds? It was like 10 years after that he was that muscle guy in the WWF.
Yeah, the last time I saw a photo of him, I don't remember when it was from, but he had gained a considerable amount of weight.
Well, there you go. I guess once you get off all of the supplements and everything, but I guess continue eating like a horse, that's what happens.
He got hurt. I mean, he was hurting himself. I shouldn't say hurting himself, but he was getting hurt a lot from almost the moment he got there, wasn't he?
Well, yeah. And see, that's I was talking about how many people he was hurting and potatoing, but he was also, I think that's what ultimately did him in. And then they said, well, maybe we're better off without him. But he was hurting himself also because all his muscles were tearing. Because, I mean, look at him. He was jacked to the gills. And he was, I don't know how old he was at that point, but he was not a young guy to have only been in the wrestling business for 3 or 4 years or whatever. But he was either hurting somebody or hurting himself on a regular basis. And nobody enjoyed having to fucking try to get a match out of him.
Yeah, they put him in there with Ron Simmons. That was the first feud that Farouk had, was Ahmed Johnson. And like right away he got hurt.
Well, but that's what they were trying to, okay, here's what we would like Ahmed Johnson to be in the ring, this, because there's almost the same size, same power wrestlers, right? Football background. So let's let Ron try to teach old Ahmed. Whew. That didn't work.
No, it did not. Let's get another question in here, Jim. Actually, a couple of questions, because this has been another popular topic and several people have sent in various angles on this. So let me get your thoughts. This first one, and then I'll read the second one, was sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Gabriel in La Paz, Bolivia.
Seriously? He is seriously in La Paz, Bolivia?
Allegedly.
and has time to write us questions, and that's all that's on his mind, and he's in Bolivia.
Oh, this show does have an international flavor. Starkville, Mississippi, Bolivia.
I saw those naked and afraid people got dropped off in Bolivia, and they had horrible fucking man-eating goddamn insects down there.
Well, here's Gabriel's question. What are your thoughts on AJ Styles calling Paul Heyman a bold-faced liar? We all know that Heyman is a massive bullshitter, but I wonder how he developed ECW into a relatively big promotion if he is that full of shit. I know that a big promoter has to be a good deceiver, but also someone you can trust.
What?
I believe AJ lost any trust he had with Heyman. And then to follow up on this, another question was sent into CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jaden Wells. I want to ask you, who do you think is at fault for Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson being released? AJ Styles puts the blame on Paul Heyman. Do you think AJ should have taken his problem to Vince McMahon? I would like to hear your thoughts on the matter, and this has been a hot button issue, Jim. A lot of people focusing on AJ Styles coming out, calling Paul Heyman a liar, saying that there's more that he's going to say, and also apparently pointing fingers at Paul Heyman for Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson being released.
Well, first off, besides the fact that I've never heard before a promoter being described as someone you should trust, or what was that line? Yeah, he should be a deceiver, but also someone you could trust. No, I don't know who's ever said you should trust any kind of promoter of anything, wrestling, circuses, or anything else. Why is this news? Why is this a shocking thing? AJ Styles called Paul Heyman a bold-faced liar. Someone once called Lex Luger physically fit. I mean, what? I don't understand. People have been calling Paul Heyman a liar for 30 years because it's well known that Paul will fucking lie to you. As a matter of fact, I think he got mad one time. I said on a program, I said, Paul Heyman would rather climb a tree and tell a lie than stand on the ground and tell the truth. It's what he does. Because he creates that whole fucking world for you that you are in, that he's made you important in, so you will do whatever he wants. They like the cult leader. That's the fucking rib that people have been saying that for 30 years. He's very good at it. He's such a good liar that it's almost kind of praiseworthy, because he doesn't just tell little bullshit lies. He weaves massive tapestries. And, you know, what is it? Like they say about me sometimes, what they said about Darren McGavin in A Christmas Story. He works in profanity the way other people do in oils. Paul works in spinning a fucking web of deceit in order to get people to do the things he wants them to do, or have things the way he wants them to be had. And nobody else could have done ECW except Paul, in part because nobody else could have convinced all those people to do all those things, not just wrestlers, but pay-per-view companies or television stations or production companies or whatever. Nobody else could have convinced all those people to do all the things they did for very little, if any, money or late money, or, you know, whatever. The reason why he was able to accomplish all that and put it together is because he has no qualms about telling somebody whatever the fuck he needs to tell them at that point in time to get the fucking mission accomplished. And it's not even vindictive. It's habit. And, you know, and there's redeeming qualities to it. Paul's lies are more entertaining than the truth. And it's created good stories. Who was it Bubba Ray that told the story of the FedEx number when, you know, because Candido told me a few of these, but one time it may have been Bubba Ray, whoever calls up Paul, can't find his plane ticket. Paul was supposed to have sent his plane ticket. Where's his plane ticket? Paul said, oh, we FedExed it. Well, what's the tracking number? And Paul rattled off like fucking 11 numbers. And Bubba said, well, wait, that's one too many numbers. He said, oh, just knock the last one off then. It's, you know, Brian Hildebrand one time was supposed to start after Smoky Mountain closed as a referee up there. or at least supposed to have the chance to start. He was booked, right? But he didn't get a plane ticket. And fucking, finally time's running out. And he calls and finally gets a hold of Paul. Oh, we'll take care of it. It'll be at the airport. So Brian drove all the way down from Morristown to the Knoxville airport, like 40 miles, right? And no ticket. Calls Paul, gets him on the fucking phone. Said, "Oh, I'll call you right back." He gave him the payphone number, right? Never heard back. Flight left. Brian went home. Fucking called Paul. Didn't answer the phone. He never talked to him again. And then he ended up getting a job in WCW. But
Jericho has that story where he was booked in 96, and when he was supposed to fly out, he couldn't get a hold of Paul. Like, day after day, no Paul. And then finally he left him a message like, "You know what? Screw you. I'm not coming." And then all of a sudden Paul called him back like, "Hey, buddy, what's going on?" All nice. And apparently when he got to the airport, everyone there was like consoling him, like, "We're very sorry for your loss." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And Paul got him bereavement fare for his dead sister or whatever.
And normally you have to have some paperwork for those kind of things. And I've told the story before about the way that Paul figured out the way to stay in Atlanta with a girl over the weekends and fucking cash in and refund his plane tickets that Turner would give him when he was doing a commentary down there. But
whoa, I don't know that. Because, I mean, obviously, famously, Paul got into a lot of problems with WCW. They accused him of falsifying his expense report.
Well, he was.
What's the story?
He was getting what was her name? Delane, I think, that managed the hotel near the airport, and the boys stayed there because she gave him a good rate. Well, Paul met a girl and was staying in Atlanta with the girl, but was still getting Delane to give him a hotel receipt so he could turn in. But the bigger one, that was small potatoes. The bigger one was the brilliant way that he managed to refund the non-refundable plane tickets. Because especially when he was an announcer, the deal was he still lived in New York, but they'd fly him down to do the TVs, voiceovers, whatever, and he'd go back. But as I said, he was getting the gimmick hotel receipts and staying in Atlanta. And actually, he didn't know JR didn't stooge him, but he busted himself to JR one morning because he was always late also. JR would mention he was always late when they would try to do voiceovers. So JR got at an early version of caller ID, right? When almost nobody had caller ID. It wasn't really a thing yet, but JR got it in Atlanta. And Paul called him one morning, like 8:30. They were supposed to be at CNN Center at 9 or 10 or whatever it was to do the voiceovers. He said, "Gosh, my plane is late," or "I was late to the plane," or whatever. He was calling from an Atlanta number. "And I won't be there till 11 or whatever the fucking case is." But anyway, the plane tickets. So he sat down and actually showed me this, Paul did, in person. He figured this out early on. They would buy you, in those days, a non-refundable plane ticket in your name, and you could make changes or you could use it to upgrade. Like if you gave them the ticket plus more money, you could upgrade, but you couldn't get the money back because it was on the Turner credit card. And the only way that they would refund the money was to the Turner credit card, right, that paid for it. However, that Paul found out that if you went in person, and these are still paper tickets, this is 30 years ago, so you got your ticket on paper. Paul would take the ticket to the counter, and he would change that ticket for a ticket for a more expensive fare somewhere, and he would put the remainder, the rest of the money, on his own credit card. So then his credit card got onto the printout on the paper ticket. It was second. The original card was first. It was second. Am I being boring here? Because the punchline is, if you exchange that ticket then for another ticket and maybe that ticket for another ticket after 3 or 4 transactions, the original purchasing credit card was off the fucking ticket. It was off the goddamn a printout that you got, and the only one left was your credit card. He showed it to me. This is what it looks like. And then he would go and he'd refund that goddamn, by now he's got a first-class ticket to Maui, but he'd refund that for the whole fucking thing to go back to his credit card, and he refunded fucking Turner's tickets. That's how he was doing it then. But anyway, so in answer to the question, And yes, so he did get popped on that a few times, but then he would always claim something that he would discrimination or sexism or ageism or my lawyer will call you. And they were so afraid of getting sued that they'd let him. When Flair fired him, well, you can't fire me. I got a contract. He's just the booker. He's not Jim Herd. So that's how he was able to always come back, because they were afraid he'd sue him, because he would have sued him. But nobody else could have put all that together besides Paul. But he had Candido and Tammy, Candido really paying for the guy's plane tickets after naming him assistant booker. Now you're in the office, so why don't you put these plane tickets on your credit card for me? It'll only run up to about 35 or 40 grand and you'll lose your house, but nevertheless.
Well, I guess the story will play out more with AJ calling him a liar. We'll find out exactly what, but in terms of...
that was the original point, is this is not... AJ didn't break any new ground, and I've never even known that Paul was that incensed about it in the past. I thought that he kind of accepted it. I told him when Candido arranged the ECW arena thing, and I said, have Paul call me. I said, Paul, just as long as I know you're full of shit, and you know I'm full of shit. And he's like, hey, I said, I'm just being honest. Don't lie to me and we'll be fine. I won't lie to you. But I told him up front, and then he still lied to me, but, you know.
Did you deal with him when the gangsters went up there? I mean, I know eventually they ended up just going early.
No, I didn't deal with him. I called him and he said, I haven't talked to him. And well, that's because he was having Todd Gordon talk to him. And I said, well, they think they've got a starting date up there. And it's 2 weeks before they're finished here. I'd like them to finish their dates, and then I will be glad. Not only can you have them, but I will shoot video, promos. I will send you footage from here of what they've done in the past, whatever. No problem. You use them. When you're finished with them, I'll take them. I said, okay, I'm glad we were able to clear that up, Paul. And right before I hung up the phone, he said, just let me know if you fire them or anything. Okay, I will. Well, then... I realized in hindsight there was his out. I didn't have to let him know that I fired him, because I fired him because they didn't show up so they could go up there and do his show. So, I mean, I'm not even knocking Paul when I say it's like everybody in the world knows that water is wet, sun is hot, and Paul Heyman lies almost every time that he speaks if it serves his purpose.
But he's very friendly when he does it.
Yes. Exceptionally charming.
Now, to the point about Gallows and Anderson, about Paulie being somehow behind them leaving, that would be Vince McMahon. You could blame creative or the booker or talent relations. At the end of the day, Vince McMahon decides whose contract they're going to cut, right?
I would need to know why AJ specifically blames Paul for that. If Paul's the one that told him, well, then it came from Vince, but Paul's the heat guy. If AJ has some reason to believe that Paul went to Vince and buried him or, whatever, but I would assume, but I wasn't in it, but I would assume that one of the big sticking points was that they had to lobby so hard to get him and pay him so much money to make him sign. And then that way it was like, okay, now there's a pandemic and you don't have the option, so we'll get even with you. I can see that's something that would be done, but I would need to know more information on why specifically that AJ thinks it's Paul's fault.
And by the way, all things considered, I agree with you that if I was them, I'd be really upset about signing that contract and being let go. They should have never been offered that contract. There really is no way to justify, no disrespect to those guys, but they weren't worth that to WWE.
Well, yeah, and that's enough. But once again, it's like when Terry Taylor told me, well, I said, what, over that whole thing in TNA, when we had the argument in the production meeting over what should be done in the match and everything. And then after the fact, I'm called and said, well, you weren't all the way with the team. I said, did I go into business for myself? No. I said, we all agreed on it, right? Yeah. I said, and what's the issue? Well, Jim, sometimes it's so hard to disagree with you. Okay, but you agreed with me. Are you a grown adult man? They told you they didn't want to fucking sign. They didn't want to stay there. And you didn't take their fucking word. You kept offering them more money until finally they agreed to sign and stay there. If you don't give them that money, that means you're the fucking prick. You should have said, okay, you don't want to be here. You don't want this amount of money. Go fucking join AEW. But when you fucking go over and above to offer people more money than they want or that they are deserving of or that they were wanting to take or whatever, then the ball's in your court. That was like that fucking idiot Jim Hurd when he offered me $100,000. Well, he offered. The point is, every time that he would offer me and the Midnight Express an increase, he would offer me an increase when I told him I was happy with the 100, but the boys had to have 150 because that's what the other heels in their position were getting. So he calls up because he was offering them 75 and me 100, the manager, because I was an announcer and I could do the hotline. You fucking idiot. So I'll take the 100. The boys got to have 150. So he then offered, well, I'll give you 125 and the boys 100. I said, okay, I'll take the 125 because I remember I said I'd take the 100, but the boys got to have 150. Then when he got to 150 for me and 125 for them, he said, that's my absolute last offer. I said, I wanted to say, but we were still trying to work with him. I wanted to say, you blithering idiot. You just gave me $50,000 more than I asked for to save $50,000 between the two wrestlers, and we would have signed this fucking deal a month ago. You fucking idiot. But anyway, it's more of that shit. You know, when you make a fucking offer, you accept the offer, then whoever goes back on the fucking agreement is the prick.
Well, you know, Jim, Paul Heyman's father was an attorney, and Paul Heyman frequently threatened WCW with lawsuits. Imagine if he had a different attorney, one that really knew how to get things done.
Or imagine if all those times that Paul Lee dangerously had threatened people with his attorney, if there was a babyface attorney that was equally, if not more powerful, if there was a babyface crusading attorney that could fight for the little guy, represent the common man against the evil multi-millionaires from Scarsdale, New York. Imagine if there had been one man, a knight in white shining armor, who could march into the legal courtroom and represent anybody against the evil corporate megalopolis attorneys that Paul Heyman was in charge of at the time. I can think of one now. If he was only around then, you know who I'm talking about, Brian.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. He'll sue the rest.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, while Paul Heyman would march into the courtroom with an attorney that looked like Joe Pesci, who would constantly talk about the Utes that were on trial, Stephen P. New, with his folksy charm and his West Virginia accent, would come through those doors like Marshal Matt Dillon walking into the Long Branch Saloon in Dodge City, and he would draw his twin six-shooters of legal documents, and he would shoot down that no-good New York corporate attorney that Heyman would have at his beck and call, and he would defend the little person. So whether you are victimized by some of these major corporations poisoning your air and your water, in some cases, as we've heard about in West Virginia, the entire freaking town, whether you've been harmed or compromised, whether you have been purposely the victim of some corporation or entity's greed and avarice, and you need to go to court, Stephen P. New of newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084, can take you into the courtroom, represent you, and fight for your rights. And if Paul Heyman tries to get Joe Pesci on you, Stephen P. New will give him an old-fashioned West Virginia mountaineer ass-whooping. Will he not, Brian?
He will.
He will. So, folks, we've said it before, we'll say it again. If somebody's fucked you around in any way, shape, or form, and you need to find out if you have legal recourse, the man to call, the man to get you what you deserve and make you whole and compensated is Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. The only thing we found is that he can't sue people for being stupid because the discovery process would be too broad. He's only one man, and there's so many cases out there.
That's right. Get even with Stephen, newlawoffice.com. But Jim, let's get a few more questions before this watch-along. A very, very popular topic that many people have sent in a question about has been FTR. Apparently, they did an interview this past week where they revealed that there was considerable locker room heat, and I guess in some cases hotel heat, from the rest of the roster in AEW after they appeared on the Jim Cornette Experience. What are your thoughts on the fact that so many people in AEW, with the exception of management, were upset with them appearing on the Experience?
This is the ultimate example of Dutch Mantel's famous prophecy of 15 years ago. I liked the business better when the marks were out front. Because now the biggest marks, the biggest goofs, the biggest imbeciles are not the fans. They're the people in the locker room. They're the fucking wrestlers. Think about this. Every single one of those fucking morons and idiots in that locker room is sitting next to, palling around with, or has no problem with somebody that has basically gone out and not only exposed the business on national television, worldwide internet, or whatever, but made a mockery of it. You've got guys that have wrestled blow-up dolls and 9-year-old girls in public. You have people that have taken part in obviously phony bullshit Saturday Night Live sketches, football field fuckery, people coming out of ice machines having transported there from different dimensions, stuff that makes Eddie Mansfield look like Toots Mondt, and that anybody involved in the wrestling industry until 10 years ago would have gotten in a physical altercation with that person for doing that in front of fans in a public forum. And they're all fucking friends. But for one of their new talent acquisitions to go on a podcast that between podcast and YouTube views has pretty much the same number of listeners as their fucking Wednesday night television program on the TNT network, to promote themselves and the fact that they're coming to this new company and they're going to kick some ass, whether they were able to follow through with it or not. At the time, they were still optimistic, and they're just going to kick everybody's ass, and they get themselves over and they are talked of as the greatest team in the world, which would benefit that joke of a promotion, because let's face it, most of my audience has functioning brain cells and likes pro wrestling, which means they spit and wipe boogers on the AEW product and talent roster. But they don't have any problem with people shitting on the business, making mockery of the business, making a business look stupid and laughing about it in public. They're palling around with those guys. But somebody that tells the truth about those fucking goof wrestlers and makes fun of them and their attempts to somehow get over, well, that person's despicable, and this new talent shouldn't be allowed to fucking promote our little weak-ass pissant of a company on his podcast with a reach of 500,000 or 1 million people a fucking week. So there you go. It's official now. The smarter people are in the seats, and the marks are in the locker room.
Especially that locker room.
Especially that locker room.
Well,
you know what? I'm just wondering what they do in that locker room. Because the last time I saw the Young Bucks in a fucking locker room, and we've talked about this, was that Global Force Wrestling show where Jeff Jarrett was apparently stuck and had to book them. They had no option. No other tag team could fill that spot. But anyway, when I walk in, there's the Bucks and there's like 12 or 14 other guys, and they're sitting on couches. It was a nice minor league baseball stadium locker room. They're sitting on couches. They're sitting in the little cubby holes that replace lockers now in these new stadiums. They're laying on the floor with their heads on their bags, and every single one of them looking at their phone, texting on their phone, looking at some video on their phone. One guy was texting another guy on the other side of the room. Nobody speaking out loud. Nobody telling stories. Nobody talking about the trip they had last night. Nobody playing any ribs. Nobody talking about pussy. In that locker room, that would be a fucking foreign concept. But anyway, that's when to break the tension as I was walking through, said, "Hey, Bucks, we got the only angle of the business people believe." And walked right on, "Hey, Jim," with their personalities. And that was my big, session where I begged them to work with them because, we could make all this money together. But these guys are just fucking bland. I don't know whether it's the generation or whether it's just the generation that wants to get in the wrestling business now. But just a simpering, bland, boring, painty-wasted group of individuals, not a wrestling locker room. Where was I going with that?
I have no idea.
Well, was there a question that I've yet to answer?
I think you somewhat answered that question.
Oh, no, I know what I was going to say. You know what they were doing? They were on their phones in the locker room. They're just sitting there quietly. They ought to at least use their locker room time for good. If they're not going to sit and ask veterans how to do things, if they're not going to talk about pussy, if they're not going to play any ribs, if they're not going to have friendly shoots on the floor, whatever the fuck, then at least they could groom themselves properly. And do you know that our friends at Manscaped have now got everything covered? We've been able to shave the crotch. We've been able to shave the taint. We've been able to shave the crack. We've been able to shave every part of our body. But now, the nails. Brian, the nails, the thing that have been left out, you cannot use the lawnmower 3.0 or the plow or anything else on your nails, your fingernails and your toenails. Some of you out there, if you've got nails anywhere else than your fingers or your toes, see a doctor. But right now, with the Shears 2.0, it's a luxury 4-piece nail kit, tempered stainless steel tools. These things, boy, I tell you what, they are slicker than cum on a gold tooth. Slash tip tweezers, rounded point scissors, fingernail clippers, and a medium nail file, right? Not too harsh, not too fine, just right. So you can clip your nails, your toes, your fingers. You can get those rounded point scissors in a variety of orifices just to make sure. And with those tweezers, you can pull out a splinter. You can pop zits. You can pull all kinds of things out of small places with these tweezers. I'm telling you what. And then make sure you don't scratch anybody, because that's another thing. That used to be an ass whipping in the locker room, guys that wouldn't keep their fingernails trimmed because you'll fucking slice somebody up. Well, now you can not only trim them, but you can file them down to where they're smooth as a baby's ass. So anyway, especially if you're one of these fucking Republicans wearing flip-flops, people don't want to see those nasty toenails. Now you can groom your feet, your fingers, and your balls, and your taint and your ass and everything in between. Get the Shears 2.0 nail kit. Get the Perfect Package 3.0 kit that comes with the waterproof Lawnmower 3.0. You get the Manscaped Crop Preserver inside the Perfect Package. It's an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. You got the Crop Reviver. It's a testicle toner that's designed to give you a little pep in your step. You get 2 free gifts when you subscribe to this Perfect Package, a Shed travel bag and the Manscaped boxer briefs. And if you go to manscaped.com and use the code DRIVE, you get 20% off and free shipping. This has always been our favorite sponsor because we are so smelly good and smooth and slick and clean and fresh whenever we get finished with these things. And you can be too. And you can get the right tools for the right job. Don't slice and dice yourself like fucking Tommy Rich on Saturday Night in the Omni. 20% off and free shipping with the code DRIVE at manscaped.com. Summer's here. Clear your weeds.
All right, well, let's get a couple more questions, even though I'm a independent who wears flip-flops. I'm sure you'll hear these questions.
You're not wearing flip-flops now out in public.
No, I'm barefoot right now.
Well, I don't mean right now in your goddamn living room. I mean out in public in these trying times.
Yeah, I unless it's freezing out, I will not wear shoes. My goal in life is to never wear socks unless I absolutely have to.
No, fuck no, because look here. Right now, don't show skin, because what happens if you're walking around with your bare feet, some asshole not wearing a mask coughs, the aisleway over next to you, wherever you're at, it fucking traipses over, it latches onto your feet, then you take your feet and you walk them into your house. You brought the plague into your home now on your feet.
I don't think I've been that close to anyone. Plus, unlike in Dixie, everyone here is wearing masks. So I don't have to worry about someone coughing on my feet.
No, well, there's always some SOB in every crowd. And then besides, do you wear your clothing into the house when you go out in public and you come back?
I do, yes.
What? Peel everything off in the garage. It's like a mud room. Think like you've been out fucking fishing. You're taking off your waders and your boots and your fucking and all this shit that smells like fish. Peel everything off in the garage like I do when I come in from yard work. Peel everything off in the garage.
When you do yard work, you take off all your clothes in the garage?
Well, goddamn, I'm literally, by the time I come in, if I've done yard work, it's the summertime. It's like somebody's poured a bucket of water over me anyway, and I've got all kinds of weeds and shit. I don't want to take poison ivy in the house, so I go in the garage, peel everything off, walk in naked, take a shower, put fresh clothes on, and then go put that stuff in the washer. Same principle here. Consider your garage the airlock. Will Robinson, you've just taken a spacewalk outside the Jupiter 2. Now you come into the airlock, you peel all the fucking clothing that you had covering your skin off and leave it laying there on the floor. And then you walk into your house, Will Robinson, there's no danger. You've left all the fucking plague virus on the clothes crumpled on the floor of the garage that's going to be going into the fucking and washed on hot. No, you don't wear your outdoor clothes in the fucking house. Have you never watched a science fiction movie?
I've watched a few.
Well, watch closer.
Let's get a few more questions here on the show. This one was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jim in Dallas, Texas. I'm a somewhat new listener, so sorry if you have discussed this before. Do you think Kenny Olivier would have had a better chance to get over in the U.S. if he had chosen to go to the WWE and be reined in by Vince or Triple H over AEW with his best friends forever, his BFFs, who will just kiss his ass no matter what? Do you think he could have had a run even half as good as what AJ has had in the WWE?
No. I've said this before, because he would have gone up there and either they would have run it. Well, he was in developmental and they ran him off, and he didn't really want to be there anyway. But if he was to somehow be signed and transported directly into the main locker room of the WWE to work in their system with the agents and producers, the creative, the other guys and everything, either within 6 months, everybody in the office would hate him so bad, they would run him the fuck off, try to find a loophole, whatever, or just book him into obscurity, because he would be a pain in the fucking ass and a constant bitcher and griper and whiner, because he would be told not to do anything that he fucking does. Either that, or within that 6 months, either they would hate him and run him off, or he would have hung himself in his closet because he wasn't allowed to do his finger banging and his gesticulating, and they would have said, you got happy feet and he needs to go to NXT because his basics suck and you can't cut a promo and that wimpy voice of yours and everything that's wrong with him. They would point it out and he would have a mental breakdown about it, because he believes truly that he is some type of great wrestling artist. So I'm not saying nobody up there would have liked him. Maybe some of the young comedy writers that don't know anything about wrestling themselves. I'm saying almost all of the producers that are veteran wrestlers and or anybody that's been around the wrestling business for quite a while would like Kenny Olivier about as much as they'd like a good fucking gut bomb from Arby's and, you know, have anal urine leaping out of them. And he would be miserable there because they wouldn't let him do everything he wants to do and tell him that he's the great wrestling artist. So it would be, I can't think of almost any other wrestler in the world that would be a worse fit for that company.
Do you think all those guys insisted on being executive vice presidents merely because Triple H is the executive vice president of WWE?
I don't know about the exact title, but no, well, if I had talked to Tony Khan before this whole thing had happened, and if I hadn't signed a non-disclosure agreement that I couldn't mention anything that I said to him, I would have told him to make sure that one or two of the wrestlers on the roster, your top guys, are also player representatives for the wrestlers council or whatever. In other words, we're taking the guys' feedback and we're trying to make it a wrestler-friendly environment, that type of thing. And if you got a couple $1 million to throw at CM Punk, or you got a couple $1 million to throw at another huge name, make them and another guys that can represent the locker room with ownership and et cetera, and make that public. And so if that had been said and that had happened, then only an idiot would have turned around and made a bunch of fucking outlaw indie guys actual executive vice presidents of the fucking company.
Okay, well, our next question, Jim, sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jeff in Massachusetts. I just heard that Killer Tim Brooks has passed away, and I would like to know if you have any stories or experience with Killer Tim Brooks.
Do you know I met him only once briefly in Texas backstage at a show, and otherwise had never seen him wrestle in person or met him in all the years around wrestling. His run ended, as mine was starting. We were never in the same place, and then there weren't for years and years a lot of these wrestling fan fests, and he wasn't a popular guest on them just because, time and people had forgotten in a lot of cases. I did not know, as a matter of fact, for ages that he was Murdoch's cousin, for real, legitimately, because I love Dick Murdoch, as everybody knows. So anyway, I did not know that for ages until I read it sometime back. And also, he never worked a territory except for the Kobo, the Sheik's territory, when I used to be able to go up to my Aunt Lola's in Covington outside of Cincinnati, and they got the Cincinnati TV so I could see the Sheik's TV. That's where I got a chance to see guys like him and Mighty Igor and Hans Schmidt, who was still in the business in the early 70s at that point, and guys that I never saw or met or ever got a chance to see live anywhere else. But I do not have a ton of Killer Brooks stories otherwise than, he was a classic territory heel. It was a classic territory gimmick. He wasn't a great worker, but he did what was necessary. He looked the part, he talked the part, he acted the part of just a fucking mean ass biker, guy you'd get in a fight with at a bar. That everybody would see these guys in the 70s and 80s hanging out in the 60s, hanging out in unsavory places, which is where he did a lot of his research, from what I understand. So it wasn't like that he was, a wrestling Hall of Fame performer in terms of his in-ring performance, but a classic look, ring name, and worked in a good spot in a lot of territories for 20 years. So he was the kind of guy those guys can't make it in wrestling anymore. You can't just get a fucking guy that's just, hey, he's a big, tough, guy. He can hold his fucking beer and look, he can kind of talk. So let's make him something. Now, they have to train excessively to do all the shit that they've invented in the last 20 years. A guy that looks like that with that body ain't going to make it. It's like as far as a promoter, a normal person used to be able, with ingenuity and a little bullshit, not as much as Heyman, but a little bit, and a little bit of money backing, realistic amount, be able to start a wrestling promotion. And if you got a territory going, it was a license to print money. No normal people are ever going to be big time wrestling promoters again. Just like no normal people are ever going to be big-time wrestling stars again. You got to go through all this, either the indie bullshit where you learn very little, or the NXT where you only learn one thing. And if you don't look a certain way, they're not going to fucking take you. And everybody, that Cornette's like, wow, you're supposed to look like an athlete. Yeah, you're supposed to either look like an athlete or a tough guy. You're not supposed to look like a fucking middle school child or a fucking gymnast. But sometimes tough guys don't look like athletes. Sometimes athletes aren't tough guys. Just depends. But normal people can't do this anymore. And that would have taken out a lot of the top promoters and or top talent in fucking history.
Did you see that Keith Lee dedicated his title win to Killer Tim Brooks, who apparently was his trainer?
Well, yes, I did see that, and that was a nice gesture, and maybe that's why Keith Lee seems like, even though I guess he's late to start in the business, he's already in his 30s, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he has a little bit of respect for it, because he, got broke in by Killer Brooks in Texas.
All right, our final question before the watch-along. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Ryan in Auburn, Washington. On the January 21st, 6:05 show, Ricky Steamboat made his debut. J.J. Dillon was pretty prominent on the episode, but leaves the NWA that week for New York. Did Flair and Wyndham know JJ was leaving, or were they just as floored as the fans were? Then 1 week later, Tony Schiavone left too. Was it known that Tony was leaving, or was that a surprise also?
Oh, God. I don't know. I was not in the office at that point. And a lot of shit was happening that, it happened quickly that we didn't expect or weren't aware was coming. And I'm not sure. And truthfully, do you remember from reading JJ's book, did he cover that? Who knew when he was leaving?
I haven't read that book in years. I forget what he said.
Gosh, I can't answer it. I have the book, but not within reach, and I can't answer that intelligently unless I would, because that's the only story I would trust is JJ's on when people knew he was leaving. But see, that's the thing. It was an awkward position that he was in because he had been Dusty's assistant for the previous, 6-7 years? So, 5. And then Dusty, is removed as booker, and then he's gone. And, JJ could have stayed around as a manager, but his entire fucking stable besides Flair practically was fucking gone at that point. So, and he had an opportunity to, what he thought, go and do well, and he got up there and they cut everybody's money and all that other bullshit later on. But I don't know who knew. And as far as Tony leaving, I'm pretty sure we knew about it ahead of time because I remember us saying bye to him, and I remember saying, boy, Tony, I don't know if you're going to like it up there. And, and then he lasted a year. He wasn't really thrilled with it, but because he was a Southern boy, he didn't want to live up there.
At the time, though, was he upset that he was kind of displaced by Jim Ross coming in?
Well, that's why he left and went and tried it out, in the WWF to see if he could be the lead guy. Because, it was after Tony had been with Crockett since 83, and he'd been the one to go on TBS. And then when JR came in, and honestly, there was room for both of them. They had so many TV shows, and I thought they did a good job working together. To me, it would have been, if Bobby Heenan had come to Crockett Promotions, I wouldn't have left. I would have just accepted that I'm going to be the fucking second best manager. I wouldn't have gone to the WWF because I've said a million times before, it wasn't my cup of tea then to begin with. But announcing, it's different, and I guess Tony just wanted to see if he could be the guy.
I remember in JJ's book, there was one story that when Dusty was there, he was going to meet with Vince, and Vince had JJ there, and Dusty insisted on JJ leaving the room because he was his former assistant booker. And he told Vince, he's like, look, there's only 2 geniuses in the wrestling business, you and me. And after Dusty left the meeting, Vince immediately told JJ everything that Dusty had said. But there was heat, I guess, between JJ and Dusty. Was there heat towards the end of Dusty's booking run between the two?
I don't think so. Not that I ever heard about. There was the times where JJ was in the awkward position because he was not only Dusty's assistant booker, but the manager of the Horsemen. And he's told the story, where he did the interview with me on, on the kayfabe commentaries, where he basically said he would have to go to Jimmy Crockett every once in a while and relay the concerns that Flair and the Horsemen had, and say, hey, Jimmy, the problem is not the business we're doing now, but the business we're going to do next year. Now it's so red hot, but 4 fucking guys standing there for Dusty's elbow and the fucking quadruple slap. If we lose the heat, can we get this thing back? And then Jimmy Crockett would have Dusty come over to the house for dinner. And then he'd suggest to Dusty, well, maybe we ought to get some more heat on the heels. And it would be kind of that thing where, JJ was in the middle of that, but at least he was able to be a conduit of information. But there's no denying that, yes, the business was as hot as it had ever been, but it couldn't possibly stay that hot, and there needed to be more heat kept on the heels as 87 into 88 showed. And eventually they did lose it, and they got it back, but they didn't really get it back like it was. They got control of it again, but by then the sale was going through.
Well, with that question, Jim, I believe it's time for our latest watch-along.
Well, thank you for that stunning segue. God damn it, Slappy. These have been popular, so we thought, and it's a palate cleanser, a classic match from some era with all of the modern stuff we had to watch. But we did 2 Midnight Express matches, and I didn't want people to, he's a glory hog. But you said that it is good for us to do matches that I have personal input on, that I had something to do with and knew some backstory on, or how it was put together. So we thought, well, let's go to another era. Instead of the 80s Midnight Express, we'll go to the 90s WWF. I had not watched this match in its entirety since probably 2 weeks after it happened. And I either watched the pay-per-view tape at home or I saw it at the studio or whatever. So I hadn't watched this with the hindsight of what we now know about the way that Vader's career would turn out in the WWF, and things with Michaels would transpire with fresh eyes, modern day eyes, right? So it was kind of interesting to go back and look at it now, knowing what's happened to everybody and some of the things that went on. But this match, it was the first of what was supposed to be. And by the way, we've done a deep dive on Vader's time in the WWF, and that is on YouTube somewhere, isn't it? Or it ought to be.
It should be on the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel somewhere, yes.
Somewhere, or you might have to go to Patreon. I don't know how long ago it was. Eventually you can find it if you look hard enough. But the problems that Vader had with Shawn Michaels, and Michaels not liking to work with Leon. This was supposed to be the start of a trilogy. It would be SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and then Royal Rumble 97 in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. The concept that Vince had was that they would have this match with these disputed decisions. They'd go to Survivor Series. Vader would win the title from Shawn Michaels and destroy his boyhood dream. And then at Royal Rumble in his hometown, in the Alamo Dome, in front of as many people as they could get there, he'd win it back. That was the plan in June and July of 1996. Well, and I don't know exactly the exact dates when plans changed in Vince's mind, but this was supposed to be what was supposed to happen at SummerSlam. This was a Pat Patterson finish. If this had been 2 guys that liked working together and wasn't a style clash and a personality clash, it would have been a great fucking finish. I loved Pat Patterson's finishes. He gave the heel and the heel manager all the outs in the world in this thing. It was unlike anything that the WWF was doing at the time, with starting and stopping the match and disputed finishes and etc. And Vader had already been allowed to run wild within the WWF parameters as a guy who caused chaos and attacked Gorilla Monsoon and shit. So creatively, this wasn't a bad fucking deal, but the finish, for several reasons, didn't work like it should. Number one, you will notice from the time that the match starts that already Vader has been browbeaten by Shawn Michaels. You never see Vader treat anybody this kindly and gently in any other promotion ever in his career. And then he didn't do himself any favors in this match with Shawn, because it was a more extensive finish and a more complicated finish than Leon was used to doing. You've seen his matches in Japan, Brian, where him and Hansen or whoever, that Inoki, they just beat the fuck out of each other back and forth and then do the finish they'd agreed on. There was not a lot of complicated, intricate pre-planning. It was it wasn't even a WWF style finish. It was an old San Francisco, fucking Roy Shire kind of finish, which is why I liked it, but not with these guys. Because also, even though Pat Patterson gave the finish and was the agent, this was going to be a Shawn Michaels match. Shawn Michaels was going to call this match. Every other match Vader had in WCW, they may not have been like the Japan matches that Vader had, but they were still straightforward. Vader and Ron Simmons, two bulls or two guys. Vader would beat people up, and it'd be a simple match where Vader'd beat guys up, and then the babyface would come back and shine a little bit, and then they'd do whatever finish. Even the match with Flair, Starrcade 93 for the career, was it?
Yeah.
That was a different Flair match because he did a lot of Vader shit, right? And it was a different kind of match than Flair usually had. Shawn Michaels was not going to have Vader's match. Shawn Michaels was going to have Shawn Michaels' match. Now, does that come down to, was it ignorance or was it cunning in that I'm going to get me over because I don't give a fuck about getting this guy over because I don't plan to do this fucking trilogy anyway? Well, who knows? It's like when the fucking Young Bucks supposedly put Private Party over, but they did it on such a fluke that it fucking meant less than if they'd have just beat them after a great match. Was it ignorance or was it cunning? With Shawn Michaels, I think it was cunning. When you watch the first 5 minutes of this match, by the time that Shawn is finished shining as a babyface, having the regular Shawn Michaels match and not the Vader match, Vader looks like a big fat fuck that shouldn't be there and is in over his head, which is probably by design. Now, most people that watch this match will go, well, wait a minute, that's the way it's supposed to be. The babyface is supposed to shine at the start, and then the heel's supposed to get heat, and then the babyface is supposed to make a comeback. And that's the way Michaels was able to get away with this, because that's the way that most matches are supposed to go, and you could claim that you were doing right. But since he was supposed to be the greatest worker in the world, and potentially the psychology should match the athleticism, a master of psychology like a Jerry Lawler, or a guy who had a vested interest in getting a monster heel over in his territory for business or as an opponent to do business on pay-per-view, Shawn Michaels was the incumbent there. He was not only the WWE champion, had been for 6 months, but also had been a main event guy there for several years. Vader had come in fucking January, been off for 2 or 3 months for shoulder surgery, and was coming back and was not over except on his previous reputation, but he wasn't over in the WWF. If Shawn Michaels had spent the first 5 minutes making him look like an unbeatable monster, he couldn't even take him off his feet and catering to Vader's strengths. Then, once it was established that this guy was formidable, finding a chink in the armor and doing the shit where he shined in the middle, and then getting a set of heat, and then doing all the finishes, it would have been better for Vader. But that wasn't Shawn Michaels' kind of match. Shawn Michaels wanted to shine. At first, he wanted to show everybody Vader wasn't in his league, and then he wanted to sell for a long time because he was the best seller in the business. And it would get more sympathy on him, so it would keep the attention on him. So Shawn shines at the start, kicks the shit out of Vader. Then Shawn sells, and even though Vader is doing all the shit, Shawn's the one getting the sympathy. He's still in the fucking the spotlight here. And the things that Leon does to piss Shawn off were either things that Leon really shouldn't have been doing to begin with, or things that Shawn didn't need to get that mad about, as we'll go over in detail as we watch the match. But that's where we stood. This is what the first match was supposed to be. Pat Patterson did the finish. This is the way the match was laid out. I can tell you that business-wise, as I open my book to August 18th, 1996, Cleveland, Ohio, at the Gund Arena. The seating capacity was 21,069, and we sold out. The house was $413,368. I received a very meager $2,940 for my pay-per-view payoff for this. They didn't pay the managers like they paid the boys on pay-per-view, and the pay-per-view payoffs during that year were not, except at the very, very top, what they could be or would be later on.
Well, hold on now. This is SummerSlam. For SummerSlam, you only got $2,900, or that's just the pay-per-view? I guess, is there a different payoff for the live show versus the pay-per-view, or was all about the pay-per-view?
Well, there used to be a goddamn difference, but I got, as a matter of fact, wait a minute. Hold on here. I didn't get another paper. Well, see, I already had the office contract, so I was double and sometimes triple dipping anyway. I was on the talent pool because I had a talent contract, so I got a payoff on the house shows that I didn't make because I was working an office job full time. So, but no, that was the $2,940 fucking dollars is pretty much what I got for SummerSlam '96. That's what I'm saying. Wow. You know, fuck yeah. And of course, I'd been there when Vince said, "Oh, let's give Nash $150,000 for WrestleMania that year. We don't want him to think we fucked him on the way out." I'm like, fuck him. But anyway.
Well, I guess that's an important note too. This is SummerSlam '96. Nash and Hall had already jumped to WCW. The NWO had just started within the previous couple of months. So WCW is really picking up steam here.
Yeah.
And the WWF has Shawn Michaels as the heavyweight champion in his match with Vader.
Yeah, well, and also, and the rest of the card, which we'll talk about in a second, but Vince paid the wrestlers more than the managers, always, ridiculously more. Taker and Mankind probably got 50, 75 grand, maybe 100 for the Boiler Room Brawl. But yeah, you even go back and look at the old WrestleMania pay. I think Bobby Heenan only got like 20 grand for, wasn't it a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam, whatever the fuck. Anyway, point is, that's why I was so anxious to keep that Toronto date the following week. Because I made $60 more for fucking Toronto than I did at the stadium for a house show for Wrestling Jose with a bad knee than I did for the SummerSlam pay-per-view. But anyway, the tickets that night were the $200 keep the seat front row, 30, 25, 15, and 10. That's for SummerSlam in '96 ticket prices. And the card was originally booked. I don't know, there may have been changes here. Run down what it says on the network with my card that I have in my book. We did the 4-team elimination match for the tag team title to make sure that everybody knew that the tag teams were preliminary guys. The Body Donnas, the Smoking Guns, the Godwins, and the New Rockers, Al Snow and Marty Jannetty.
Leif Cassidy and Marty Jannetty, I should say. Savio Vega against Owen Hart. Jake the Snake Roberts against Jerry Lawler. Mark Merrow with Sable against Goldust with Marlena. I have here a live interview with Farouk Assad, which Ahmed was actually, I see, was erased. It was in pencil and he was erased. That was a time he was hurt, I guess. He was injured and Farouk did an interview because the match had to be canceled because of Ahmed's injury.
Yeah, well, there you go. Sid Vicious versus the British Bulldog. Taker and Mankind in the Boiler Room Brawl, and Shawn and Vader. And, of course, Jose Lothario was in Shawn's corner opposite me. That's another thing. If you go back and watch that era, Shawn did not want Jose anywhere around. Shawn never acknowledged Jose physically when he was there. Shawn talked about Jose only when specifically told to in interviews, and basically acted like he wasn't there because it interrupted his dancing and his prancing and his Heartbreak Kid entrance to have his old trainer there. It was Bruce Pritchard's idea. It was simple. Have Mickey with Rocky. Jose Lothario really did break Shawn Michaels into the business in San Antonio, and it was his initial trainer. So bring Jose Lothario in and have Vader fuck Jose up, and then fucking Shawn wants to get even to go for revenge. But because Shawn was never able to convey any love for this man or any gratitude for this man or anything that would make you think he'd be mad if he got run over by a fucking bus, that didn't work either. He was just, Bruce had a great idea there, but Michaels wasn't going to fucking put it over. Which is why this is when we talk about everybody was at the mercy of Shawn Michaels' temperament. This is what I'm talking about. These kind of things that a lot of people didn't talk about at the time. But we were talking about it plenty in the goddamn, it was like, does he hate fucking Jose? And the time that he yelled at me and Jose for taking the attention off of him and Vader in Anaheim. when we were 50 feet from the ring and I was trying not to outrun the 60-year-old senior citizen. Although actually, he might have been able to catch me for real. Nevertheless, that was the card in Cleveland, the night that I ate at my first Buffalo Wild Wings. Chicken wings were not a big thing till the mid-90s.
Well, plus, there was a free-for-all match. Steve Austin defeated Yokozuna.
That's right. That's not even in my book. That's not even on the fucking card. That must have been a last-minute, something happened.
And you managed Davey Boy against Psycho Sid.
Well, see, I don't even remember that because, like I said, I hadn't watched this in ages. You will see during this match, we'll call out Michaels' temper tantrums as they happen. You will also see, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, as I take the only bump I was going to take all night. Well, the first bump, I took a couple. Michaels nails me off the apron. I was supposed to stay on the apron because the referee was supposed to stay with me and try to push me off the apron. But I started to take my normal bump. When somebody would punch me on the apron, I'd spin off and go all the way to the floor. I realized I shouldn't do that too late and try to catch myself on the bottom rope, and I just spun myself around. You can't see on camera, but my left knee, the point of it went straight into the fucking ground. I popped my bursal sac, and it started filling up with fluid and blood. So that was fucking, at the end of the match, by the time I'm cutting the promo after all that's happened, the last promo I cut, I'm blowed up and I'm in pain and I sound like I'm talking like this. I'm so fucking tired, blowed up, hurt, disgusted. So then the following day, I can barely bend my knee and it's purple from my thigh down to my fucking ankle. And I'm like, fuck, we go to Wheeling, West Virginia for TV the next day, Columbus, Ohio for TV the next day. And then we had 3 days off. Well, I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and on Saturday I'm in Toronto, Canada, and I got a bad knee and I'm driving. I drove from Connecticut. So instead of driving all the way back home, being home for a day and turning around and going to Toronto, I just stayed over in fucking Michigan and went right up to and iced my leg for 3 days and then went to Toronto. And I didn't tell anybody it was fucked up because they wouldn't let me work. And in Toronto, we had fucking 30,000 people and did $436,612 at the gate. And I had the match with Jose. And so I just strapped up my knee brace and fucking did the fucking 4-minute match and got paid and had the thrill of working in front of those people. And then drove home the next day and went to the doctor and had my knee drained, which is an interesting thing, where they put a needle in and they suck all the bad shit out until all the bad shit's out. And it feels good at first. And then when the needle is all the way in between your fucking knee bones and they're getting the last of it, it stops being a help. So that was an interesting week. But
what do you mean they wouldn't have let you work? Who would have stopped you from working as a manager because of your knee injury?
No, with Jose, the match.
Oh.
The match, me and Jose. They would have said, you can't. Jack Lanza would have seen it and said, fuck, no, don't worry about it. And they probably would have paid me anyway. But I still wanted to wrestle Jose in front of 30,000 people for 4 minutes. So, but yeah, if anybody'd seen my leg, they said, you don't have to do that. But anyway, and by the way, and just so you know, in that Toronto CNE Exhibition Stadium show on August 24th, the seating capacity was 54,000. We did not do that. However, like I said, we did do, the tickets were 25, 18, and 11, and we did $436,000. And you know what the deal was with the stadium? No rent, guaranteed. It was an 80-20 split like a spot show.
Wow.
And these 80-20 split. So they ended up getting fucking $86,000 and change just on their rent, but they paid the advertising, which was $30,000. So, and then as a matter of fact, and then the next day, Nassau Coliseum ran. No, you know what? I went back because I didn't tell anybody. I forgot about this. I didn't tell anybody till Monday because Nassau Coliseum, the main event was Shawn and Jose against me and Vader. So I waited till Monday before I told anybody about my knee because I made another $1,750 there. Because this was like a fucking $10,000 or $12,000 week, and I was just a fucking manager, and I only worked, fucking 3 or 4 shows. But they did 146 grand there, and the Nassau Coliseum ticket prices, compare this with modern day, 25, 20, 16, 12, and 10. And the deal with the Nassau Coliseum that had a seating capacity of 17,286 was the rent. A lot of these bigger buildings and bigger markets would give you a different deal depending on your gross. If it was 15% flat plus costs, meaning ticketing, security, staffing, etc., unless if they did less than $120,000 gross, it was 20 grand flat. If they did over 120 grand, it was $23,000 flat or 15% and costs, whichever was greater. So they'd give you they used to do that with us sometimes in the Knoxville Civic Coliseum. You get a flat rent or a percentage, whichever is greater. But anyway, and then I went back and told them I needed to have my knee drained, and I limped around for a few weeks. So that was what was going on at the time in August of 1996 in the WWF. Madison Square Garden, by the way, just real quick, since we're going into business statistics, Madison Square Garden had been August 9th. They had two seating capacities, 16,227 or 19,443. It depended on whether they opened up all the upper deck. And the ticket prices were 25, 20, 16, 12, and 10. We did a $239,594 house, which tells me that there were somewhere around 15,000 people there. I made $1,250 for managing Vader against Sid. And the rent at that point for Madison Square Garden, are you ready for this? $65,000 flat plus 15% of all the gross over 200 grand. And that, as a matter of fact, I don't think that counts staffing. Because
and if that was filmed, it would have been even higher because that's a union building. You had to pay for everything in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, well, I remember in September of 96, hold on. September of 96, I got the book in front of me, so I'll just find it. Boy, this is going to be a long watch along, but this is somehow fascinating to fans in the modern. September 29, 1996, the lowest house of the modern WWE era. Shawn and Taker against Goldust and Mankind, and Sid and Vader in a lumberjack match were the main events. Did $146,437. And I remember at the time they said that by the time that they deducted the rent, the taxes, and the expenses, that they were pretty much writing the Garden a fucking check to draw 146 grand. By the time that they lost money, by the time they paid the boys. And I only got a $500 payoff for Madison Square Garden, which is another reason I didn't like to go to that fucking place.
There's always that expression said that Vince Sr. told Vince Jr., how goes the garden, goes the business. Did you ever hear that from Vince?
Yes.
himself?
Yes. And you can look back to September 96. After they drew that house in the garden, that's when he panicked and started doing a bunch of crazy shit. That was the start of the Attitude Era. Anyway, so having said all these things, are we ready to watch Shawn Michaels versus Vader from SummerSlam 96? You'll never look at it the same way again.
I think so. So for everyone at home, on the WWE Network, go to SummerSlam 96 under WWE Pay-Per-Views, and the time we'll be starting at is 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 55 seconds into the pay-per-view event. Of course, if you have the option underneath the video to jump to, you can jump right to Vader versus Shawn Michaels, WWE Championship.
Or they could stop by and watch the little promo that I cut right beforehand, because it was fairly decent. And Michael Hayes' hair has never been shorter in his adult life than it was that night.
You do have that option to see the promo with Doc Hendricks, Jim Cornette, and Vader. But once again, the time will be starting as 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 55 seconds into SummerSlam 96. If you're ready on your end, Jim, we will do a 5-second countdown, and then we will press start on the video. Are you ready?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start.
Correct. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, with that said, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Press start now.
And here we go. And you see the people coming up, the crowd pan. There's the couple with the fluorescent colors in the front row that were always at all the pay-per-views back then, and they're from Ohio.
Annoying.
I'm going to be in the minority here. I hate the fucking ramp. I hate the big stage. I love this. Now, in the old days when we had to come down the 3-foot wide aisles and they'd beat the shit out of us, I didn't love it. But coming through the people, look, they're throwing shit. You can see people reaching. It looks like you're in a crowded arena. The stage to me is so sterile, and there's no people around, and there's no chaos going on. They're throwing the cups and shit and blah, blah, blah. Even though we didn't have a lot of heat, real heat, even back then in the WWF as compared to the 80s NWA, still, but there's the racket. I've got the side of my head blocked, right? Because nobody's going to peg a fucking quarter into my fucking eye. But that's anytime I'm walking down a crowded aisle, that the racket blocks one side so I can look at the other side and they can't hit me from the blind side. Gund Arena in Cleveland, beautiful building. Definitely better than the building that Ox Baker had the riot in 74 when he turned on Johnny Powers. Or no, when they turned on Ernie Ladd, I should say.
How much does Vader weigh here?
He's probably 4'10", 15-ish, somewhere around there, high 380s, somewhere in that range. He was up about 430 when he had the shoulder surgery, but he'd lost a little bit. And now, see, here's another thing. Leon is being Leon. I'm just up on the ring. I don't know when he's going to stop fucking dancing and prancing for the people and going around the ring. He used to drive them crazy. This was before they laid out step by step everybody's entrance. But you never knew whether he was going straight in the ring or just go around because that's what he'd always done. And now they're trying to find a fucking camera that has a decent shot because they weren't expecting this, right? And I'm like, well, the clock is ticking, but he's being Vader. And see, and they didn't know he was going to do this because he just decided to fucking do it. That's what drove Vince and the production crew crazy. Leon just wants to go tear some shit up and be Vader, walk around and intimidate everybody. Anyway, finally we get him in the ring. I swear to God, Vince is about to have an orgasm right before. Listen to this with the commentary. It's Vince and JR and I think Mr. Perfect. Vince not only came when Shawn's music threatened to start, but now the whole time that Shawn is coming to the ring, he is going to goddamn sell Shawn Michaels like an auctioneer. I mean, he fanboys. I heard it at the time, but now after the evil Mr. McMahon and everything, going back and listening to him just beg people to love Shawn Michaels is insane.
Packed house.
Well, see, then the pay-per-views, it was a novelty for shit to be on television and a big event like that. So, yeah, definitely. You know, plus, even though business was not great, the big shows drew. And they had a wonderful promotional department. Ed Cohen and all the local market reps. Look, Shawn Michaels is not going to look at Jose Lothario, the forgotten man. He is never going to fucking... And the kid hopped over the railing and... You know, so that shit like that happened. Now they'd probably fucking spear her and take her out. And I mean, I could hear Vince screaming now from 24 years ago, the boy a dream. He's gonna...
After everything you said before, I just feel bad for Jose watching him here.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was doing what he was supposed to be, trying to do what he's supposed to be doing, but he, you know, and I liked him and we, you know, we worked better together than Shawn and Vader. By the way, I hated this. The pyro they had to slide in and set up and the entrances. And to see, this is Michaels doing his thing. And a 60-year-old Hispanic man from Texas didn't fucking fit this fucking entrance he wanted to do. But also Vader had to dive out of the ring. At midnight when the Road Warriors would, sure, we would do that. But for Vader, a monster, to have to get out of the ring for a guy half his size because we got to have the pyro. I hated that shit too. It this was before it started that everybody had to have their entrance and the other guy had to fucking disappear. You didn't jumpstart shit when you weren't supposed to, but you didn't run screaming and disappear like a fucking thief in the night. Tony Chimmel's looking 25 years younger these days. You're right. You know, Michaels, compared to Adam Cole, Michaels looked great. He's a fucking same fucking size in the legs and the height, but his upper body, he carried it off. He looks like a fucking grown adult man. Yeah. You only have to know him personally, know he couldn't whip cream with an outboard motor. So now look, Leon's like, as he had it, because now remember, folks, Leon has already been suitably chastened and warned by Shawn Michaels not to be so goddamn stiff. And I want you, when they do the first lockup, which the bell's going to fucking go here in a couple minutes, on the first lockup, you tell me Vader ever locked up like a motherfucker or like this with any other motherfucker in the history of the wrestling business. He's doing everything he can in this match not to upset Shawn Michaels. And this is why Vader didn't get over in the WWF. Of course, they did sell a lot of those Heartbreak Kid glasses to all those girls, the little pink heart-shaped fucking things we just saw a minute ago. So Lawler sold a crown to somebody in the front row. Anyway, here we go. The lockup, and boom. Normally Vader would knock you down locking up with you, right? And you can watch when he starts with the gut punches and the headshots, he's taking it easy on. Look at that lockup. And a little boom, boom, boom. That's easy because he's already, and Shawn's selling it great. And no, you shouldn't potato a guy, right? The art is working, but still Vader was so intimidated and he was overthinking everything he did. He was erring on the other side and not being as Vader as he could have been. But Michaels is great at selling anything. He knows how to take the bumps, right? And he knows how to make the facials and get the fucking sympathy. But the bell rang 45 seconds ago. And boom, and already now look at Shawn Michaels. Remember I talked about Shawn Michaels going to have his match. He's not going to make a monster first and then overcome the monster. He's going to do all of Shawn Michaels' shit. Look at this now. Leon is a big fat fuck covering up in front of a guy half his size and who's daring him to get up. And Leon doesn't know what he's going for here. And so he's just kicking a shit out of this fat guy that's in over his fucking head. Is that what you see now in hindsight?
Yeah, this is ridiculous, especially if you've seen some of Vader's other matches with Sting and Hogan and everyone else.
Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Sting, Antonio Inoki, but not good enough for Shawn Michaels. Okay, well, maybe Vader will get untracked here now. Or maybe not. Because remember, Shawn Michaels is going to shine as much as possible. And every time you touched him, he'd sell it. But goddamn, he was coming up with things where yes, he's out maneuvering the big guy, but Vader's taking more bumps here than Nyla Rose on AEW at the start. And as I mentioned, if you'd have made a monster and put worry in people's minds for 5 minutes, then you can do this shit for a few minutes, and it's fine. And everybody had to dive even then. No, just Michaels did. That was Michaels' thing back then. But now, and I'll just beat him up some more down here on the floor. And then let me get in the ring and fucking get my glory. And now I'm going like, yeah. It needs to be in Hulk Hogan. See, he's even making fun of it. I've just beat up this 400-pound guy who was giving Hogan trouble, and I just ripped off my T-shirt. And now he wanted this spot for whatever fucking reason. He slides out, gets in between us. Oh, I scream and run away. And then he foils Vader behind him.
He's making himself look really strong here against Vader. Wow.
Did Leon White ever have a match like this anywhere else?
No, not that I can recall.
Never. And once again, now he's taking a Hurricane Rana. And also, Michaels is doing this because as much as he can move Leon around in the early part, Leon's going to have less steam when he gets to kick Shawn Michaels' ass, right? Now, you'd think this would be a goddamn place where Leon might be able to stop Shawn Michaels, right? Oh, no. We'll just boom, there we go. And Michaels is fresh as a daisy. Listen to people, they're with it. Michaels was over, and they wanted to see somebody treat Vader like that, but they didn't need to see it in the first 4.5 minutes of the match. And finally, I think we might get a fucking heat spot here in a second. Yeah, there we go. And he said it. Watch, he followed him all the way down before he let go of him. And that was a nice, safe power bomb on the mats. Probably not what Leon had done was he not intimidated, but it made a noise and it served its purpose. Now Michaels gets to sell. And he probably wasn't happy about those, especially with what would happen later in the match. But this is where Michaels is great. He sells, he gets sympathy. And with a monster like that, yes, you can do that. But why didn't he make the monster first? Because he didn't want to. The monster has a reputation from Bavaria. When he was Frankenstein, he killed all those villagers. But now he's come to the United States, and he can't whip shit. And boom, nice and flat. Didn't even let go of him 6 inches off the floor. This is what I'm talking about when I've mentioned that Vader never got a chance to be Vader. And also, everything was so clean here and lit up and nice. Vader was more of a monster that worked in the dark wrestling buildings. And somehow or another, Michaels had said, throw me over your shoulder and put me back in the ring here. And this is how Leon decided to do it. I don't know what the fuck. But once again, somebody else is calling his fucking match. Leon was not a polished worker, and that's not how he got over. And everybody else, fucking worked with that. But again, you can't fault Michaels' selling here. He's doing everything right. Remember when he did everything right with fucking Hogan and everybody else he wanted to bury? He'd do everything right, and then you'd figure out later on, but it had the opposite fucking effect. Leon shit still looks good. Those punches look fine, and he's not hurting this fucking guy. But the hair, that's nothing. The hair was an issue. He would lose track, and he'd grab a guy's hair, and Michaels was... The time in Tulsa, they had a house show match. Leon rolled out. He had tears in his eyes. Says, what's the matter? He said, he just told me if I pulled his hair like that again, it'd be my job. Like, fuck. And when you see these two guys, and look at the way Leon could move. He could take bumps. He could do moves. He was an incredible athlete for that size. You just had to build shit around him that kept his aura of invincibility, minimize the shit that he would really potato you on. And also, they didn't need to go this long, but this was starting to be in fashion where the main event match would be 20 minutes. And of course, now every match is 20 minutes. That's how you tell whether it's good or not. But Vader you didn't need to go this long with this guy because it starts getting a little preposterous at one point. And I hated this here. Michaels did a great upside down. Then he started doing the deal where he'd flip back and land on his feet. Look at this bump. Tremendous. The old Harley race that Triple H does now. Either one of those, the upside down and stay there or the shoot off into the fucking corner and over the top, was a great bump, but he'd put them together till it looked like gymnastics. And then Leon had the notorious, and you can go back and look if anybody wants to back that up, weak arm whips. And together with Michaels' moves looking so pretty and Leon having a weak arm whip, it just looked too ballet-like. When Ray Stevens would go into that fucking buckle like a goddamn truck hitting somebody. It was acrobatic when Michaels did it. I like to say, like I said, the over the top, but geez, he just had to do everything. Anyway. And I'm wondering when something's going to go wrong.
What are you thinking at ringside? Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, like it's not going as bad as some of the house shows matches have. Nice backdrop. See, that's the kind of stuff a little guy can take off a big guy and it looks impressive and nobody's getting hurt. But, so far, besides not being I was used to bad matches in the WWF being ringside for us. This was a great match compared to, let's face it, Yokozuna and Earthquake in a sumo match. Right here, Michaels had just told him to do something. He was going to shoot him off, but he said, no, this or whatever the fuck. So he just called something that he could, he's going to do the fucking, well, I don't know if they ever got what he was going to do because Vader was going to shoot him off. Shawn told him to do something else. He picked him up. Nah, now he's getting it. The flip up and over. And you can tell Michaels already, okay, now I've had to tell this guy twice. But this is a hope spot. Babyface has to fire up some points during the heat and get stopped with a thumb in the eye or a move or whatever. Or a sunset flip is a hope spot, and then you kick out of it and go on. So that was a little fire up. The babyface can't die. Moves out of the way, but boom, once again, walks right into the clothesline. This part ain't bad. But see, now Leon is sucking wind because he's had him going so fast at the start of the match that when it comes time for Leon to be Leon, now he's fucking sucking wind. I don't know what that little conference was about. Oh, okay. I think you said this one. Yeah, okay. Michaels' punches, by the way, when he wanted them to be, ironically, were as stiff as Leon's. Skin the cat on this one, but with his neck. I hated those real ropes that they had. That's why they bend so much more than the WCW ropes, because they're real ropes, not cables. And that's why they are so dangerous. That was nice. I'd never seen that before. Just, don't take the head scissors. Just launch him like a sack of shit. And I guarantee you, we've talked about it before, and I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, but Leon had that one outfit and that one mask, and the way he sweated, those things stunk. It's time, it's stinky time, is what we used to say sometimes behind his back, and I guarantee you Michaels didn't want to be covered, or this hold. This is not a hold. This is not, nor has it ever been a hold, but because once again, Shawn Michaels is having his match, not Leon's match. When did you ever see Vader grab a hold?
I never saw this Jake Hager chokehold done by Vader before.
Okay, he wanted Vader to grab a hold. He's going to sell, calm him down for a minute, and then he's going to start coming back up and get the people back up. And that's what happens. However, Leon is like, grab a fucking hold, and what can I do? I don't want to be laying on you. I don't want to be stiff. This is not a fucking hold. And Michaels couldn't even say a bear hug because he wants to be able to go down to his knees and then come back up and do his thing, right? So now Leon's like, can I come back up now? Okay. And I guarantee you some of Michaels' punches here are fucking taters. I can still hear Vince screaming in my ear, even with the fucking voice off now. Look at Michaels. And here again, this had the glimmer of something good, but somehow it managed to fucking turn it into, this is a nut shot thing. And then here we go. We're coming up on it, folks, in 15 seconds. Michaels is firing up. And he's going to go to the top and miss an elbow. But, he's called while they were in that hold. He's called all that shit that you've just seen. The fucking nut thing and the fucking flying burrito off the ropes. And now he's going to come off and he's going to miss the elbow. And Vader forgot to move. He kicks him in the head hard. Vader says, what the fuck? Michael says, move, and kicks him in the side of the head again. And Leon getting up says, Jesus. And now Shawn is calling something else for them to go into their fucking over-the-top spot. Reversal, fucking duck, here we go, because this is the spot they were going to go over the top. And what a fucking bump on both guys' parts. But Michaels is now pissed. Watch the camera go in to get a good shot of him selling. And Michaels says, get the fuck away from me, because now he's fucking pissed, because the big man didn't move on the elbow. He could have landed the fucking elbow. It wouldn't have killed Vader. Or he could have done anything professional, but instead, because a guy didn't move on the elbow, instead of just doing the move, he kicks the guy in the head for a shoot twice and screams move loud enough that the fifth row heard it. When you go back and watch that, folks, you'll hear, what the fuck, after Vader gets kicked in the head, move, kicks him in the head again, Jesus Christ. Now Leon, look at Leon's face. He knows he's fucked up. And Michaels ain't going to forget this. They're back in the fucking match that Shawn wanted to have, but that's the most unprofessional fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. And one of the reasons why Leon didn't move is because later on in the match, in one of the 15 false finishes, he's supposed to hit the elbow. So Leon had a brain fart. But go ahead.
So really
and wait a minute. We just missed the count out. Leon dropped Shawn over the fucking railing and the referee counted him out. So Leon doesn't get the belt. And I'm challenging Shawn Michaels not to let it go that way. What were you going to ask?
So to say so, I mean, to the point you had earlier, this really got in Leon's head.
Oh,
Shawn Michaels doing all this. If he had pulled his hair one more time or had worked his match, would Shawn have gone to Vince and could he have actually gotten him fired? Or would Vince have said, oh, just relax?
Well, yeah, he would have done what he did, which was go to Vince and bury him and say he can't work and he's a piece of shit and I don't want to work with him. Now, he wouldn't have got him fired. He just got him fucking ixnayed like he was, which is what happened. This was the downfall of Vader's career in the WWF. Anyway, so now Shawn Michaels has been counted out and he's going to leave, but I'm screaming, you got no guts. Come on, restart the match. Hebner's giving him the opportunity. And now Michaels like, okay, I'll do it. He wanted Leon to jump him in the aisleway. Leon now is so fucking verklempt, he don't know what to do. So you'll see here in a second, Michaels is going to fucking jerk away from Jose and tell Jose, go tell a big fat fuck to jump me. Right, look, right here. Go tell a big fat fuck to jump me, because he's still pissed. He's jerked away from the referee, slapped the cameraman. He's fucking telling Jose what to fucking do. Now Jose goes and passes it, and here comes Vader. And now the next false finish, I don't want to spoil anything, but the whole idea was that Michaels has lost by countout. In the previous month in the pay-per-view tag match, Vader had pinned Michaels. So now Vader's pinned him in a tag match. Now he's beat him by countout. And now he doesn't know what to do because Jose won't back up from him. And I took it easy on that racket shot because I was like, I know what's coming up in the finish. Now he's about to lose again by disqualification here in a minute, and we restart it again. So he's been beaten by Vader every way except by a pinfall when the title's on the line. And that's the picture they were trying to build. But the behind the scenes, the styles clash and the personalities clash is not doing us any fucking favors here. Little bit more heat. This one was there. And that's the worst place in the world to be covered, right under his armpit. Oh, look at Michaels wiping his fucking face off. Yeah, this is just like motherfucker. And I think now here we're about to go. Yeah, watch this coming up in about 15 seconds. You know how when Michaels was he would come out from under the heat, he'd knock the fucking heel down some way with a big dinghy. I think he even kissed him on top of the head there, like, fuck you. Boom. Remember the nip up? He'll milk it. He'll wait. He'll get him rumbling. No, he's like, fuck this. I'm going up. We're going to get this done. No milk. Straight nip up. Here comes the elbow this time. Boom. He says, I want to get out of here now. Now he's tuning up the sweet chin music. I got to stop this. Here's my apron spot coming up. Watch when he pickles me. And it wasn't a tater, but I was ready for it. I got to chuck the racket to Vader. Boom. I started to go off, and then I said, oh, wait a minute, let me hold on, and I banged my fucking knee. But I've got the referee. Now look at these shots. Well, I did have the referee, and he turned around. Look at these shots. The frame, overhand, with force. Look at Leon covering up. I came in. I saw what was happening. I came in with my arms up, blocked that one, and then I fed him my ass for the rest of them. Motherfucker. He's swinging like I'm a mark, like Leon was a mark. And he said afterwards, I don't know how to work with gimmicks like that. You fucking lying sack of shit. The best worker supposedly in the business. He's got a goddamn metal fucking club in his hand. Instead of working it or even asking how to work with it, he's fucking teeing off overhand, one-armed as hard as he can. Fuck you. Anyway, he just got disqualified. So now, here come all the agents, the referees, the whole 9 yards. They're going to separate this. And now I'm limping and I'm blowed up, and at least I don't have to get potatoed anymore. It can't end this way. If you've got any balls, start the match over again. The title can't change hands on disqualification. Yeah, I'm blowed up. And I'm leaning on the top rope because my knee hurts. I'm like, is this ever going to be when will this bullshit be over with? Because from the time that everybody in the building heard Michael scream and move, I knew that this was going to degenerate into shit. But yeah, that little temper tantrum with the racket was not. I remember Dick Murdoch, one of the best workers in the world, took that racket one night in Greensboro and hit Big Bubba like fucking Shawn hit Vader and busted him open for like 8 or 10 stitches. So it can happen. Anyway, now they've restarted it again. Now it's to a finish. See, the fucking finish is good. The people are up and down. They didn't know what the fuck was going to happen. They didn't see a lot of this shit back in that time in the WWF. So it was exciting for everybody. And another elbow. See, he hit 2 of them. It's just the first one he was supposed to move. And now watch this. He's made the comeback. Hits the elbow. And a sweet chin music. Boom. And it kind of looked okay. And 1, 2. And Leon was late on the kick out, but Michaels, instead of coming off, Michaels was already up off of him to begin with and looking at the referee and just goes, what the fuck? So everybody was like, and now Leon's like, what the fuck? I don't know what was going on there. I didn't want to ask either one of them at the end of it. Now they bump the referee. Earl took a nice fucking bump, but there was just another miscue of a half a tick on that false finish just to put the exclamation point on this stinker. It wasn't a stinky match to the people, but everybody involved in it hated it. Now there's no referee. The referee's down. Oh, wait, here's a second referee. 2, no.
Yeah, the fans are into it.
Because they don't know what the fuck's going on.
What do you think is going through Vader's mind right now?
I don't know. I think he's probably like, my God, can I just get through with this? Is anything else going to happen? And this was the last out that Pat Patterson gave the heel. He's won on disqualification. He's won on count out. Each time it got restarted. Now he's got the babyface ready to put him away. He's going to do the Vader bomb, but the manager says, no, give him the big one. Do the moonsault. And right here, I say, no. Go to the top. Go to the top. And they even make the point here in a second. Well, if Vader had hit the Vader bomb like he was going to, JR did, thank God. He had presence of mind. It would have been over with. But Cornette trying for the all or nothing, and he gets nothing. Boom. And, of course, I was convinced Vader was going to miss him anyway because he was in the corner so fucking tight. But somehow he did that tight rotation. And see, that's why I try to tell baby faces about pulling themselves up by the ropes and struggling. Michaels did that great, and to pull yourself to your feet so it's so visual. But anyway, here we go, a move that, as far as I know, Michaels had never done before or since. That's what got him. I don't... Anyway. So everybody was happy because the question had been asked, obviously, including by Leon. How can this be a 3-way or 3-match series and when the babyface wins the first one? It's because we're going to make all this controversy. Then you're going to do the fuck at Survivor Series, and then the big, babyface gets his retribution in the Alamo Dome in his hometown. That's the way it was originally presented to everybody, including, I was told this. He told me this in July that, the week before the Alamo Dome, we're going to have you go down in a cowboy outfit and a big 10-gallon hat and do the press conference. I'm like, okay. Well, it never came to that, thankfully. People have still never seen me in a cowboy hat.
Well, remember, too, funny enough, years later, Hogan and Shawn Michaels was going to be a 3-match program, and Shawn wanted to win the first one. Yeah. And Hogan was like, how about I win the first one, and I win the second one, and I win the third one, and then it was 1 match.
Yeah.
Hogan was too
funny
smart.
How all those things. Well, yeah, but that's where Shawn learned a lot of this stuff, but he couldn't out Hogan. Anyway, now all the suits have gotten us out of the ring, and Vader's disgusted, and Michaels is pissed, and of course, I'm at least with my guy, and Michaels has his belt, and Jose's on the outside of the ring. The Lord knows you shouldn't have your trainer anywhere as a part of this magic moment. I think somebody may have even fucking told Jose, get in there or something. I can't remember at this point. But, Sid, there was no emotional connection between them.
Was it like that from the moment Jose came back for WrestleMania?
Yeah. Just because Michaels would say, I want to do I will do something, doesn't mean he wants to or he's going to make the most out of it. So he agreed to do the deal, but that's how he usually did things that he didn't want to do. He either overdid them to the point where you could tell he was overdoing it or he didn't do them at all.
Well, there it is. SummerSlam 96, Vader and Shawn Michaels, a different way to look at it now after hearing you comment.
I was about to say, will you ever look at it the same way again?
No.
And that's why a lot of people see, if you're not an artist, but you see a painting and you say, wow, that's better than I could do. That's a nice painting. That doesn't mean that the artists all agree that it's a great painting. And even if it was a great artist that did the painting, every great artist, every painting they did was not always great. So there were good things about this match. It was a good finish. It was involving guys that were relatively over. Leon not in that environment, but over in the wrestling industry. And if it was done a little bit differently and with more cooperation or enthusiasm on certain people's parts, it could have been better than what it was. So I see things that could have been a lot of times instead of what people see just judging what they saw in front of them. And now that you go back, you'll never be able to unhear, fuck, move, Jesus. I have never seen anybody do anything that unprofessional in a fucking wrestling ring in front of a house like that. I haven't seen people say shit like that in front of high school gyms at spot shows. But this guy not only fucking made it obvious to everybody on television and in person that he pulled up because the guy didn't move, but then screamed at him, move, to make sure everybody knew, and kicked Leon in the side of the head for real twice just because he knew that he already had Leon bamboozled to where Leon wouldn't get up and just knock him the fuck out cold dead with one punch, which he could have if he'd have wanted to.
Which he should have.
But then he would have been fired. Because if 10 minutes into a 20-minute fucking world title match on pay-per-view, Leon on purpose knocked out the fucking weaselly little shyster shit douchebag world champion, Vince would have fired him. And he knew that.
But then we'd never hear about the Paul Orndorff fight again. It would be about him knocking out Shawn Michaels on pay-per-view.
He could have redeemed himself in the locker room, but he would have lost a lot of money. So there it was. Any questions, class?
You covered a lot, obviously, before and after the match, and during the match. So Vader got moved out of the program with Shawn Michaels. It became Shawn Michaels versus Sid at Survivor Series, where Shawn had another hissy fit because the fans in the Garden turned on Shawn and they were cheering for Sid.
Yeah.
Which Shawn didn't really like, leading to the Alamo Dome match where Shawn wins the title back from Sid. What was the rest of Vader's run in 96, 97 like after this? Did it affect Vader? Did it affect the way he thought of his job?
Yes, then he was fucking cracked from then on. And remember, and we've said this before, and I said go back to the old YouTube clip where we did a deep dive on Leon, but he came from football and had only had a short time in wrestling until he became a world champion in Japan and was a big deal. And so he never made the transition to one of the boys in the locker room rather than a guy on a football team. So he looked at things in that way a lot, and he not micromanaged, but he overanalyzed shit. And sometimes he and Vince McMahon, as I've said, never got each other. He didn't get Vince. Vince didn't get Vader. Vince had never seen Vader before he showed up in the WWF. So Vince didn't get Leon as a person or Vader as a gimmick, and Vader never learned that he was getting on Vince's nerves to the point where by some point in 97, every time you'd mention Vader's name, Vince would roll his eyes. Because, I mean, there was Leon, and it was a two-way street. They did him wrong when they brought him in and debuted him, and then he had to take time off for the shoulder surgery. The shoulder surgery was worse than he'd let on. He had to take more time off. There was weight issues. One time, Leon was disturbing everybody because he wanted the ring truck to take these dumbbells around to all the TVs so that he could work his bad shoulder out beforehand. And that's the most, whether the ring got there, he wasn't worried about. He was constantly asking about his dumbbells. It was just a variety of things. And after Michaels and them finished burying him, like, we don't want to work with this guy. He came from down south. He don't know what he's doing. He's too stiff, whatever the fuck. They just made sure that he was out of their clique and they didn't have to worry about him. But in the meantime, now Leon has been told he don't know how to work. He's too stiff and he's got to be more entertaining and all the other shit. So he just starts overthinking himself. And then, you know, JR used to have to sit down and talk to him because JR was like the football-minded, you know, coach of the team. And he'd get somewhere with him, then something else would happen. And then it ended up, he would, by the end of, how long was he there? He had signed a 2-year contract and he was there right at 2 years, right? First of 96 to end of 97.
Yeah, I think so.
And there was no thought of re-signing him, and I don't think he wanted to re-sign. I don't know. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but they knew it was over with because they never got each other. He got off on the wrong foot. He didn't become a force, and everybody else was figured in better because that's who the problem children wanted to work with. So, and he loved working with Cactus, and Cactus loved working with him. They'd made money and done, you know, all kinds of shit in WCW. So him and Mankind was good. And, you know, but otherwise he didn't fit. He didn't fit in what was still more of a cartoon performance, non-sports based thing. You couldn't get heat on a goddamn man-eating monster because they didn't buy it even then. Of course, it's changed tremendously since then, but it was the start of it at that time.
And nothing said to Shawn Michaels about yelling "move" to the point where you could hear it if you were sitting at the commentating table like Vince McMahon was.
Well, I'd like to think that Vince McMahon called him in his office and said, "You little fucking prick, you exposed my business one more time on pay-per-view or in front of 20,000 people, and I'll slap you myself." But since Vince was screaming, "Oh, Shawn Michaels is a fucking boyhood dream. Oh, God, look at him. He's so great."
How much of that was Vince?
Word.
How much of that was Vince's? Was Vince just doing hype because he's the promoter and this is his top star? How much of that was Vince truly loving Shawn Michaels and what he was doing?
70-30, I think, toward the loving him. And I'm not talking about it. Everybody else wants to do the Jim Barnett, Tommy Rich thing. Shawn and Vince were gay. No, fuck you. Get over it. He just thought that he was going to make a bunch of money with Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels is a great performer and blah, blah, blah. And it fucking used to give me the worst kind of sour belches. And stuff that other people would get fired for or yelled at or whatever, this little fucking jack-off could do, pilled up, pricked to everybody because he was the best performer in the ring. But I never thought the headache was worth what we got at the gate because he didn't draw Austin money. He didn't draw Rock money.
No, he was the second worst drawing champion after Kevin Nash, wasn't he?
Well, I mean, you could point to somebody that only had it for 3 weeks or something, you know, but no, the business was not good at that time. And fucking booking was a pain in the ass because you never knew what this fucking idiot was going to do and what he wasn't. So I don't know why he put up with it. All I know is that after this match, I was just as anxious as Shawn Michaels was to not have any more Shawn Michaels and Vader matches because I didn't want to be involved with him.
Well, with that, wrap up another episode of the Drive Thru. All right, that turned out well, that little song there. Let's end with an actual song.
You know what? Actually, I was about to say we ought to end with an actual song, but also that turned out well, like AEW has the greatest tag team roster.
Well, I guess it's a good comparison there. Let's hear this one. So send in the CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Josh Hughes.
Cosplay matches. walk around with knives. People book Omega, but nobody can tell you why. Welcome to the Cornette experience. Not a friendly place for the Republicans. Welcome to the Cornette experience. Well, Tony Khan is waiting with open arms to take you in. You shouldn't be ashamed, though. It's not a crime, it's just a sin. You're blocking folks on Twitter for posting things that you don't like. People sell the dick flip, but nobody can tell you why. Welcome to the Cornette experience. Tell us all the things that make you furious. Welcome to the Cornette experience. Listen to the Cornette experience. A podcast that takes wrestling serious. Listen to the Cornette experience. Featuring Mr. Co-host Brian Lass.
You got mentioned there. Jeez. That was an abrupt ending.
Wow.
Well, that was the Inagata Davida of song submissions. But Josh, excellent musicianship. We have a variety of quality musicians out there in the cult audience out there.
I was going to say that was too good.
That was it was original, fucking, you can tell he's doing it himself. That ain't a karaoke track there. Bravo, Josh. Bravo,
Great guitar
Josh.
solos.
Great guitar solos, little lengthy for a podcast stinger, but we'll work with it.
I thought it was very good. Like I said, too good, considering some of the other submissions we've had on this show. But
I thought you meant too good considering this shitty show we did today.
well, that too. But with that said, we wrapped up another classic episode of the Drive Thru. Of course, you can hear actual classic episodes of the Drive Thru from 2013 and 2014, as well as classic episodes of The Experience.
Wait a minute. Is that we're only up to 2014 and already have that many episodes? I guess we've been doing this a long time and there's a lot of shows.
That's right.
This Patreon, what a fucking deal.
$5 a
$5,
month.
right?
That's right.
$5
$5 a month.
and there's now literally 100-something hours up there or more, and you're going to get another 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. In fact, we got 6 more years to go. By the time that we get everything up, this $5 will be the best deal since they bought Manhattan for $24.
That's right. And eventually we'll have other content and other tiers. But right now, $5 gets you access to the archives. I will say there is a growing movement, a growing frustration from people not happy with the co-host on those shows. The comments are getting nastier and nastier.
Folks, we do not have the budget nor the time to go and overdub my original co-host's contributions, if I can use that word, to the proceedings. It is what it is. Just like, sometimes there was Pert Kelton was the original Alice Cramden. She only made 1 season, but people don't carry pitchforks when they show those tapes, so bear with us. We're trying not to change history here.
Once again, patreon.com/Cornette.
When did you come along? 2015?
2016, the beginning of 2016.
2016. Okay, not much longer, folks, and we get to the real good stuff.
Not much longer, only another year plus.
Yeah, well, it ain't going to take a year.
No.
It took a year back then, but we're not in real time now. That'll be up long before a year from now.
Another batch of episodes goes up each and every Sunday evening. Check that out today. Of course, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel for clips, full episodes, omnibus collections, and more. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette, or go to tinyurl.com/official-cornyyoutube. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast, and you can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast, 605pod.com, are available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcasts. Go through the archives today. All episodes are available at 605pod.com. Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. We'll be back up soon, accepting money again soon. Just you wait.
Just you wait. Next weekend, I'm not giving any specific day or time. I want people to filter in gradually. There's no reason to become an angry mob. Move slowly toward your computers next weekend, and merchandise will once again be available for sale.
JimCornette.com. Of course, the drive-thru is brought to you by the law office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until next week on the drive-thru, and this Friday on The Experience, for Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!
Move! Move!